Chapter 1598. Lu Jing had agreed to Cui too hastily. He had wanted to erase Cui's pride and bad habits as an aristocrat before agreeing to become an official. An obedient and dependable lord was much better than a fool who liked to think he was smart but was full of problems. In the end, the plan could not keep up with the changes. Firstly, the situation did not allow for further delay. Secondly, Cui's acting talent was top-notch. Now Lu Jing had tasted the bitter fruit. Ever since the 4 factions of Nanman were destroyed, Cui had ambushed the allied armies under the suggestion of Lu Jing and the others. He had taken over their military forces and territories and had expanded several times over. Too much expansion had caused Cui to float up to the sky. The aristocratic bloodline in his bones had started acting up. This was because Hua Yuan spent most of his time giving advice and suggestions, while Lu Jing was managing the internal affairs of the secular world. They did not have as many opportunities to show their faces as the former. As time passed, Cui did not think much of Lu Jing, who had once assisted him. He even felt that Lu Jing was an eyesore and dispensable. Lu Jing's ancestral home was in Dongqing. He had only agreed to become an official because Cui had urged him many times. His ancestors were hunters and he was born poor. Hua Yuan's ancestral home was in Nanxing Ningzhou. He was the descendant of a typical aristocratic family. Even though he had experienced hardships and his family business had been taken away by his uncle and aunt, he was still an aristocratic family. Hua Yuan had taken the initiative to side with Cui. His thoughts, interests and standpoint were all highly in line with Cui's. For example, slaughtering the innocent people of the 4 factions of Nanman and aborting the Nanman bloodline in a pregnant woman. They had a common enemy and it was easier to resonate with them. On the other hand, Lu Jing had opposed Cui's slaughter of the Nanman captives more than once. Considering their friendship, it was fine once or twice. But Lu Jing had been an eyesore too many times. How could Cui not hold a grudge against him? Lu Jing knew these principles. But there were some things that he had to do even though he knew it was impossible. If everyone did not even have the courage to speak the truth for the sake of flattery and self-protection, what would be left in this world? The boy servant and Lu Jing were of one mind. Seeing his teacher's situation, he was rather worried. Seeing this, Lu Jing said in amusement, "Why are you so worried?" The boy servant said, "I'm just worried that you'll be at a disadvantage." Lu Jing said, "Where have you been reading all the books I've taught you? Don't you know what it means to use a gentleman for those who know him and a woman for those who like her? If Nduishi treats me as a national scholar, I will certainly repay him as a national scholar. If you treat me like grass, humph." This was Lu Jing's temperament. In his previous life he had fought to the death for his former master. In the end he had cursed Jiang Pingji and jumped off the city wall to resist with his life. That was because his former master was worth risking his life for. Right now Cui and Lu Jing were not compatible, and Cui could not make Lu Jing risk his life for him. Lu Jing could only do his part. It would be best if Cui was willing to listen to his advice, but if he wasn't willing, then it was up to him whether he wanted to listen or not. The errand boy was stunned. Lu Jing snapped, "The head on your teacher's neck is very precious." "Oh, I understand." Seeing that his page boy had gone to work, Lu Jing felt a sense of helplessness and heaviness in his heart. His brows were still tightly knitted. At that moment, Lu Jing's mood was a little complicated. In the words of the audience in the streaming room, Cui was like an account that he had painstakingly leveled from a whiteboard to the maximum level. He had added equipment to this account, increased his battle level reputation and bought a cool appearance. In the end, the account had been snatched away by a fellow with the same account. Although Lu Jing was depressed, he did not have a deep relationship with this account. Naturally, there was no situation where he had to be the owner. At the very most, he would just have to level up another account or collect a completed main account. On the other side of the conversation, Cui's side was in chaos, while Jiang Pingji's side was very harmonious. In order to show her seriousness, Jiang Pingji had spent a lot of effort on her attire. She had been pulled out of her warm bed early in the morning. "If my lord is tired, close your eyes and rest for a while," Wei Ci gently whispered in her ear. Jiang Pingji's eyes were half closed and she responded vaguely. "Speaking of which, if I were to ascend the throne in the future, would I have to wake up so early to attend court every day? Would it be so tiring?" Wei Ci said, "There are major and regular court meetings. Major court meetings are held every New Year's Day, winter solstice, and Her Majesty's birthday to be worshipped by hundreds of officials in the main hall. Regular court meetings are more casual and their schedule is more flexible. If my lord feels tired, it's better to set the time a little later. Naturally, they had to be fully armed during the major court meetings. Their attire had to fully display the majesty of the royal family. Regular court meetings were more casual. Their attire was more inclined towards daily life. It was impossible for them to spend an hour or even an hour every day to dress up. How could they have so much time to waste? Jiang Pingji said, I feel much more at ease after hearing what you said. Wuxia laughed and said, My lord is starting to worry about the days after you ascend the throne. Jiang Pingji said with a smile, Isn't it because I'm afraid that I'll wake up too early and have too little time to pester you? Wuxia held it in for a long time before he squeezed out 4 words. Be careful of your words and actions. Her good mood for the day began with playing with Xixiao. Jiang Pingji slept very soundly last night, but Yang Tao and the others tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. They endured intermittently until dawn. When the 2 parties met, Jiang Pingji looked Yang Tao up and down. Once again she confirmed one thing. This was indeed a world that valued appearance. Almost none of the leaders of the feudal vassals were ugly. Their looks were all above average. Yang Tao's looks even exceeded the 90 mark. Didn't they see the group of salted fishes in the live stream who were obsessed with looks? Their eyes had seen thousands of ships and they had seen all kinds of beauties. But as long as they could truly pick someone, they would definitely be a real beauty. Yang Tao's looks could withstand their nitpicking, which was like using a magnifying glass. He was definitely a natural handsome guy. Yang Tao was good-looking and the few people behind him also had their own merits. Tudu Feiqiu, Tisei, it doesn't seem like an official occasion to accept Yang Tao's surrender. It's more like the streamer is choosing a man. Qingfeng Wangyue, now that you put it that way, isn't Beauty Ci the Empress? The salted fishes laughed and laughed, but Jiang Pingji could not be so casual. Back then she had used the Oath of Alliance to recruit Huang Song, which completely reassured Huang Song and his former subordinates. Now that she was recruiting Yang Tao, she naturally could not be careless. No matter how extravagant one's words were, they could not compare to a black word on a piece of white paper. Today they said that they had accepted Yang Tao's surrender, but the main topic was still to discuss the contents of the Oath of Alliance. Although Yang Tao was the defeated party, Jiang Pingji did not embarrass or humiliate him. Instead she showed her sincerity. She even personally thanked Yang Tao for leading the troops to repel the invading Nansheng army and protect the city. She did not mention anything about what Yan Lin and the others had done. Yang Si, who was sitting at the lower seat, was not very happy. But when he remembered that his lord was biased towards him, he did not argue with Yan Lin and the others. Jiang Pingji showed her sincerity, and Yang Tao's side naturally knew what was good for them. Therefore the atmosphere was quite harmonious. Chapter 1599. Xiaoyang, why do you think Lu Shi suddenly made such a request? Because Jiang Pingji was sincere enough, and Yang Tao didn't cause any trouble, the oath was quickly confirmed. Both parties were very satisfied. Yang Tao's old subordinates were originally worried about their futures, but now they were relieved. Yang Tao didn't feel completely at ease, because he didn't understand Jiang Pingji's request. Did she trust him or did she want to take the opportunity to kill him? Lord Jingza, you don't have to worry. Qianxia couldn't call Yang Tao Lord now, even if she hadn't changed her boss. After all, this was Jiang Pingji's territory. It was for Yang Tao's own good, to reduce the possibility of Jiang Pingji suppressing him. 2 tigers couldn't live on the same mountain, so Jiang Pingji could be the lord. Qianxia wasn't Yang Tao's guest. After choosing, he chose a respectful title that didn't alienate or overstep. Yang Tao crossed his arms. He didn't find anything wrong with Qianxia's change of title. He sighed. When my father was still here, he said that Lu Shi wasn't a person who could be judged by common sense. Now that I look at it, my father was right. I really don't understand Lu Shi's actions. Xiaoyang, did you see anything? Yang Tao's IQ was slightly higher than that of a normal person, but compared to a strategist who specialized in scheming, he was still a long way off. Anyway, he had a ready-made external brain and he had a chance to ask for help, so Yang Tao didn't waste his time. Qianxia said, the Oath of Alliance was just made. If Lu Shi really had evil intentions, she wouldn't have shown it now. There are many benefits to treating Lord Jingza well. Not only can you successfully incorporate your old subordinates, but you can also win a good reputation in front of the world. Yang Tao said, I know this, but I just don't know what she's trying to do. After all, he had been a lord for so many years. Yang Tao had been influenced by what he saw and heard and learned a lot of scheming and strategies. He was not as naive as he was when he was young. However, he could not see through Jiang Pingji's plan to let him have military power after he surrendered. He was so ambitious. Wasn't she afraid that Yang Tao would use his charisma to win over the soldiers and secretly seize military power? Then he would jump out and cause trouble when Jiang Pingji was slacking? Qianxia had a guess in her heart, but she couldn't say it out loud in front of Yang Tao. Yang Tao said, if you have any guesses, just say them. Do I look like someone who's difficult to talk to? Perhaps it was because he had shed his identity as the Lord. Yang Tao now had an empty title but no real power. He no longer had to maintain his bearing like before, and his words and actions had become casual. He even put his hand on Qianxu's shoulder while withstanding his companion's death ray. Qianxu walked properly, her back was ramrod straight and her eyes were looking straight ahead. On the other hand, Yang Tao was swaying left and right as if someone had pulled out his backbone. Qianxu wanted to say something, but Yanlin spoke for him. She probably wants to recruit you. Qianxu heaved a sigh of relief. He had been suppressing this thought in his heart, and it had almost caused him to suffocate. Yang Tao blinked in confusion. He pointed at himself and said, didn't I swear an oath of allegiance to her? My lord, by swearing an oath of allegiance, you mean that you will be pampered by Lu Shi like Huang Song. You will be a carefree rich man who doesn't care about anything. When Lu Shi ascends to the throne in the future, he will give you an empty title so that your descendants can live in ignorance. Yanlin snorted coldly. I'm afraid Lu Shi wants you to become her subordinate. If you completely surrender to her, it's hard to say what will happen in the future. The former was a waste of time, but at least there was a guarantee. To put it bluntly, it was an iron rice bowl where you could eat, drink, and wait for death. The latter still had room for advancement, but the price was that you would have to pay for it by bowing down to your former opponent. In the future, you would have to be twice as afraid of your former opponent. Since ancient times, those who had made great contributions to their lord did not have a good ending. If the person who had made great contributions to their lord and held the military power was their former opponent, the whole clan would not be able to live in peace. Yang Tao finally caught up with their train of thought. He rubbed his chin and said, Lu Shi really didn't hurt his head these past few days? Yanlin said, Lu Shi probably knew that Xiaoyang wouldn't agree immediately, so he used your familiarity with Nanxing as an excuse to let you follow the army to war. At the same time, he exposed his own shortcomings to show that there are not many generals in the army who can take on big responsibilities. He asked you to help supervise and train the troops. Rather than saying that he was giving you access to military power, it was more like he was testing you to see if you had any objections to this so that he could come up with a countermeasure. Yang Tao was stunned. He didn't expect Jiang Pingji to come up with so many tricks for him. He couldn't make up his mind. Then what should I choose? Qianxu sighed. There are pros and cons to this. If you accept it, you won't be as decadent as Huang Song in the future, and your descendants won't be restricted when they become officials. But there are also cons. Once Lu Shi becomes suspicious, you and your clan will be in danger. Jiang Pingji appeared to be open-minded at the moment, but who knew what would happen in the future? People change. Otherwise, why would there be so many shitty things like getting rid of the donkey when it was no longer of use? Many feudal lords and their officials had a honeymoon period of intense affection. After that period, there would be no shortage of killing acquaintances. It can't be, right? Yang Tao looked hesitant. He said, what was the relationship between Lu Shi and Huang Song in the past? They drank together and went to brothels. Although Lu Shi and I interacted, we didn't have a friendship when we were young. Why didn't she give Huang Song a chance? It doesn't sound reliable. Yanlin sneered. Huang Song and Xianxia are different. Lu Shi isn't a nepotistic person. He's very cold and clear-headed. To put it nicely, it was clear-headed and rational. To put it bluntly, it was mercenary. Huang Song couldn't bring her many benefits, so why would she let Huang Song, a hidden danger, be in power? On the contrary, many of Yang Tao's former subordinates were left behind by Yang Jian. They had rich battle experience and were adept at the art of war. They came from a legitimate family of generals. Yang Tao's former subordinates would be more loyal to Jiang Pingji for the sake of the two previous lords. Lu Shi has a lot of generals under his command, but there aren't many who come from a legitimate family of generals. In the past they fought on a small scale, so this flaw wasn't obvious. Now that they've conquered all of Dongqing, Nanqing only has Chui. They can't do anything alone and Zhongzhou is half destroyed. They probably won't be able to stop her ambition. Now that she's expanded, the unorthodox ways she used to be won't be enough. Naturally, she has to find another way to make up for her shortcomings. Yanlin was the cleverest one. He clearly saw Jiang Pingji's intention in recruiting Yang Tao. Yang Tao suddenly understood. He said, "This? I'm afraid I have to think about it." Chapter 1600. Yang Tao, on the other hand, didn't find it unacceptable. He had an empty title and it was safe for his family to eat, drink and wait for death. But if anything happened, he would still be at the mercy of others. Empty titles were not as safe as real power. If he was afraid of overdoing things, he could be a little more mediocre in the future. His military rank was neither too high nor too low. It was still safe. Anyway, even if he had real power, Jiang Pingji still had to give him the empty title. He had 2 layers of protection. Most importantly, he was used to fighting and fighting. It would be hard for him to return to peace. Yang Tao was not someone who could sit still. Yanlin sighed. "Think about it slowly, Xianxia. Whether you agree or not, remember to drag it out a little longer. Keep him in suspense." Yang Tao was dumbfounded. "Keep Lu Shi in suspense?" Yanlin said, "Whether it's a man or a woman, those who get what they want too easily don't know how to cherish it." Keeping him in suspense was not only to let him know how to cherish it, but it was also to increase his own value. Yanlin knew Yang Tao's temperament better than anyone else. To put it bluntly, he knew what kind of sh*t he was about to poop when Yang Tao stuck out his butt. He was decisive and decisive. Once he made a decision, he would not hesitate. Yanlin was teaching him to be reserved and to put on airs. After all, if he didn't put on airs now, he might not have the chance to do so in the future. Yang Tao's expression was complicated. "I have a family." Yanlin's words were too ambiguous. Jiang Pingji was a good-looking woman. She was charming, powerful and powerful. Even though humans had gotten rid of the stupidity of beasts, there were still some similarities. When it came to choosing a mate, capable males were favored by females. Regardless of gender, powerful men were indeed more attractive to the opposite sex. There were many gossips among the people about this female lord and the officials around her. It was just like when a man was surrounded by female officials. The people would think that there was some kind of indecent relationship between them. Yanlin glanced at Yang Tao's face and let out a rare snort. "Xiaoyang, why are you looking at me like that?" Yanlin smiled. "Xianxia is beautiful, but you are not the most beautiful woman in the world. That Lanting Duke will not covet your beauty." Yang Tao had always been very confident in his face. He said, "How is it not stunning?" Yanlin asked him, "What do you think about Lu Shi's man Wei Ci?" Qiansu and Yang Tao were stunned. Why did the topic change to Wei Ci? Qiansu recalled Wei Ci's face and heard Yang Tao say, "A refined gentleman, outstanding." Yanlin asked, "What does he look like?" He was a refined gentleman who stood out from the crowd. What people praised was his moral conduct, but Yanlin asked about his face. Yang Tao racked his brains for a long time. He felt that any word that was used to describe Wei Ci would seem slightly vulgar. In the end he said, "Sha is he," Xiaoyang said. Qiansu couldn't restrain her laughter and almost couldn't hold it in. Yang Yen and Yen was said, comma. And Wei was Yang of and of Yang of things. Of Yang. Of. Yang Tao was an adult. How could he not answer that question? He said straightforwardly, "Of course it's the lovers' necks going to hell together." It was as if someone was strangling him and muffling his voice. Qiansu also stopped. The two of them looked at Yanlin in shock. Yang Tao said, "I remember Lu Shi has many accessories. Why did you notice this?" Qiansu understood. When they first met, Yanlin pointed out the mistakes in his accessories. He was so observant that it seemed like he had OCD. Accessories weren't something that could be worn casually. What kind of accessories would be worn according to one's status, occasion and age? These were all things that had to be paid attention to. If he made a mistake, he would be ridiculed behind his back for not knowing etiquette. No matter how casual Jiang Pingji was, she was still a lord. Today was the day she and Yang Tao made their vows. She couldn't make a mistake on such a small detail. If she made a mistake, it was not because she didn't care but because the three of them looked at each other. They had mixed feelings. Yan Lin looked down and murmured, "Keep it to yourself." Yang Tao said, I know. I won't tell anyone." He used to think that the gossips spread by the ignorant people were slandering her. He didn't expect Jiang Pingji to really have an affair with the officials. Yan Lin added, "Don't think too much. The two of them might really be in love. If she, as the Lord, had fooled around with the officials, it wouldn't have come to this." He could feel the atmosphere of a group of forces. Yan Lin's first impression of Jiang Pingji was that she was upright. He also realized that other than Wei Xi, who seemed to be in a relationship with Jiang Pingji, the others didn't treat their lord as a woman. Yang Tao was the most obedient. He did whatever his friends said. It was lunchtime. Jiang Pingji invited Yang Tao and the others to eat with her. The various delicacies were delicious. Zhangzhou had a lot of seafood. Under the guidance of salted fish in the streaming room, Jiang Pingji expanded her menu. Yang Tao and the others grew up near the water. They didn't know that common seafood such as scallops and oysters could be cooked in such a way. Before Jiang Pingji came, the culinary skills of this era were limited to plain water. There were few seasonings and the most they could do was add salt. The gentry ate meticulously, but they didn't have many ways to cook. No matter how good the ingredients were, the taste of the food was limited. Yang Tao finally understood where Jiang Pingji's Xianxia restaurant could go. The food was indeed delicious. Therefore Yang Tao asked Jiang Pingji for a chef. Xiao Yang said that Jiang Pingji needed his help. It was okay for him to be a little willful. As expected, Jiang Pingji agreed. She even asked for the second-best chef in the kitchen. Yang Xi's eyes turned red with jealousy. He had coveted his lord's chef for so many years. His lord had never thought of rewarding him. Yang Tao had just arrived and he wanted to take it. Seeing Yang Xi's angry expression, Wei Xi smiled and passed him a plate of roasted oysters that he hadn't touched. Unexpectedly, Yang Xi rolled his eyes at Wei Xi after taking it. Wei Xi understood immediately. He whispered, "When the war is over, I'll give you one of the chefs in my manor." Yang Xi was satisfied. "This is what you said. Don't go back on your word." The cooking skills of the chefs in Wei Xi's manor weren't worse than that of the lords. It was just that Wei Xi needed to recuperate and eat more carefully. These chefs were specially transferred over by the lord. If he couldn't ask the lord for help, he could take advantage of Wei Xi. It was fine as long as he could satisfy his tongue. Wei Xi smiled. "You can't eat too much of it." Seeing that Yang Xi liked to eat oysters, Wei Xi kindly added. Yang Xi asked, "Why?" Wei Xi said, "It strengthens yang and nourishes yin." Chapter 1601. Strengthening yang and nourishing yin? Yang Xi couldn't eat at this moment, but he was greedy if he didn't eat. He was in a dilemma for a moment. Finally, he placed the chopsticks neatly and lowered his voice to Wei Xi's ear. "Wei Xiao, are you not sincere? Did he look like the kind of man who needed to strengthen yang and nourish yin?" Men could say anything except no. Yang Xi suspected that Wei Xi was deliberately disgusting him. Wei Xi blinked innocently and said with a puzzled expression, "What does Jing Rong mean?" "I'm just reminding you that this is delicious, but you shouldn't eat too much. Jing Rong's temperament is to eat delicious food until you're sick of it. If something goes wrong, it'll be too late to remind you." Yang Xi said, "How many years have we known each other? Don't pretend to be innocent in front of me. You can deceive people who don't know, but you can't deceive me." Wei Xi's network was really wide. Except for a few exceptions, most of Jiang Pingji's subordinates had a personal relationship with him. For example, Feng Zhen and Yang Xi walked right into the trap because of his introduction. It was precisely because they had a good personal relationship that they understood each other particularly well. Yang Xi knew that if Wei Xi's face was not too deceptive and he looked too righteous, how could no one see through his true nature? Wei Xi smiled and said, "If you don't eat it, don't waste it." He pretended to take the stack of oysters back, but Yang Xi was one step faster and stopped him. "How can you take back what you've given away? Who said I'm not eating it?" Yang Xi rolled his eyes and said to Wei Xi with a smile, "Zixiao on the other hand needs more nourishment. You also know the current situation. If there's a, that would be the best." Wei Xi took a sip of tea and lowered his eyelids. His long and thick eyelashes cast a fan-shaped shadow. Jiang Pingji's hearing was excellent. She had always been observant and attentive, multitasking. How could she miss the movements on Wei Xi's side? She secretly rubbed the accessory hanging from her waist with her fingers. The corners of her lips curled slightly, as if there was a layer of gentle ripples in her eyes. No wonder so many salted fish in the streaming room said they wanted to swing on his eyelashes. She also wanted to set fire to his heart. Wei Xi said in a low voice, "There's no hurry. Why are you panicking?" Xianxia almost choked. He said angrily, "You're older than the girl by 6 or 7 years. If you wait any longer, will you still be able to give birth?" After all, the relationship between Wei Xi and Jiang Pingji was not made public. A few smart people were well aware of it and had reached a tacit understanding, but more people were still kept in the dark by the two of them. The Lord did not say to make it public, so this matter could not be made public. Xianxia had to be careful when he spoke. Wei Xi sneered, "Jing Rong is older than me by 6 or 7 years. In other words, if Xianxia could make an iron tree blossom, why couldn't he who was younger and had more self-discipline do the same?" This group of people loved to worry for nothing. Xianxia really wanted to hammer Wei Xi. He was supposed to be his best friend, but in the end he was a plastic product. Could he still have some love? Delicacies were constantly being served, and no one was in the mood to discuss business. It was more important to fill their stomachs. Xianxia decisively abandoned Wei Xi, who had given him a heart attack, and threw himself into the arms of delicious food. His appetite alone was equivalent to that of 2 Wei Xis. Of course, the one who had the best appetite was his lord. She ate as much as 7 or 8 burly men. Yang Tao, who claimed to be a big eater, was stunned. He had seen people who could eat a lot, but he had never seen anyone who could eat so much. After the banquet, Yang Tao could not help but complain to Yan Lin. "Now I know why She wants to conquer the world." Yang Tao crossed his arms in front of his chest and said while nodding. Yan Lin thought that his friend had some brilliant idea. "Why? No one can afford to feed her. She can eat too much," Yang Tao said. "If she doesn't fight for it, she will starve to death in the backyard." Yan Lin was speechless. If it were not for the people around them, he would have taken out his swords and taught Yang Tao a lesson on how to be careful with his words and actions. Little did he know that Jiang Pingji had already heard him. After all, her hearing was unreasonably good. "Did something good happen, my lord?" Wei Xi was about to help her sort out the official business, but he did not expect his lord to suddenly laugh. It was a helpless and doting smile. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "Nothing good, but Yang Tao is really a wonderful person. Yan Lin must have worked hard for his personality." Wei Xi was at a loss until Jiang Pingji repeated Yang Tao's words in a low voice. "He's a treasure boy. So funny." Jiang Pingji did not mind Yang Tao's sarcasm at all. Instead, she thought that he was quite cute. He was silly and adorable, just like Li Yun and the others in the past. She cared more about her frog and flirted with him at all times. This time was no exception. She said, "Zixiao, can you afford to feed me? Even if I have to eat 7 or 8 men's meals in one meal." Wei Xi sighed and said, "My monthly salary is paid by you, my lord." Jiang Pingji said, "Zixiao, your answer is so straightforward. How do you expect me to continue flirting with you?" Wei Xi said, "My lord, it's time to deal with official business. I don't want to be a blue-faced troublemaker and let you hold up your work." Jiang Pingji poked his nose and said in annoyance, "Unromantic." Wei Xi said, "Unromantic." Wei Zixiao sincerely asks my lord to stop sneaking out this afternoon and focus on official business. Is that okay?" Jiang Pingji was speechless. How was this a lover? It was obvious that she had found herself a housekeeping robot. Moreover, she was using both hard and soft tactics as well as seducing. Because of Wei Xi's supervision, Jiang Pingji's plan to sneak out and be a hands-off boss was once again foiled. The 5 million idle viewers could only watch Jiang Pingji squat in the government office and compete with piles of documents. They drank tea and ate melon seeds. They smiled at Jiang Pingji's desperate look. Blow explode little chili. The streamer uses her personal experience to tell us a truth. You can't find a man who is full of career ambitions when you fall in love, because the other party will ignore your flirting and seduction. He only wants you to work hard for your career with him. Wei Xi helped Jiang Pingji tidy up. When he lowered his head, he saw that the accessories on his waist were a little strange. He took off an accessory and frowned slightly because it belonged to his lord. His own piece ran to his lord's waist. What's wrong? Jiang Pingji looked up at him and saw what he was holding in his hand. She said, I put you on my body. Are you touched? Wuxia couldn't help but hold his forehead. He had an indescribable expression. Jiang Pingji asked him, What's wrong? Wuxia said, My lord, do you know about Yanlin's experience? Jiang Pingji said, I've heard a little about it. Wuxia said, In my previous life, Yanlin once reported an official because he was dressed inappropriately. The two became enemies because of that. Jiang Pingji said, Dressed inappropriately? How so? Don't tell me you're doing a uniform play? Chapter 1602. Jiang Pingji rubbed her chin and said, Are you trying to say? Yanlin probably found out about our relationship? That I slept with my subordinate? Wuxia said, Most likely they won't think too well. Jiang Pingji said, What's wrong with that? I don't plan to sleep with him or Yang Tao, who he treats as his precious eyeball. Wuxia was speechless. His lord did not care about her reputation at all. Wuxia, who valued his lord's reputation, was a little tired. Jiang Pingji said, You don't have to change it back. It's not like I can't be seen. Since she did not care, it was useless for Wuxia to persist. He was worried, but at the same time he was secretly happy that he despised her. After a few days, Yang Tao agreed to Jiang Pingji's request. Jiang Pingji also gave him enough trust to appease his old officials. At the same time, Jiang Pingji also sent a large number of scouts to find out the situation under Enchui's rule. Only by knowing oneself and the enemy could one win 100 battles. Days passed. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. Jiang Pingji was ready to slack when Wuxia was not paying attention. She heard salted fish cheering in the live stream as soon as she got up. She opened the bullet screen and saw that it was the day of the birth of the lucky emperor. She glanced at it and was about to close it. She did not expect a gorgeous face to appear on the screen. Even Jiang Pingji, who was very strict about appearance, had to admit that the face was indeed beautiful. Of course, the owner of the face was not the body of the salted fish who had transmigrated. The body of the salted fish was similar to that of a guard. His appearance was of a standard that could not be found in a crowd. It seems that there is no danger. Jiang Pingji made a simple assessment of the situation and went out to slack. She did not expect that the group of people was coming for her. Sigh, it is indeed not a good identity to transmigrate. The lucky emperor felt pain all over his body. The straw sandals on the soles of his feet had long been worn out and there were many bloody blisters. If not for the two goddess-like figures sitting under the shade of a tree not far away, he would not have been able to sit still. To save his life, the lucky emperor chose the principle of talking less and doing more. He took off the straw sandals hanging on his shoulders and put them on while listening to the situation. Perhaps because there were too many lucky emperors, the crowd also wanted to compete. No matter what character he became, he couldn't be the unlucky one who was forced to end his transmigration before his time was up. Therefore, lucky emperor endured the pain in his feet and body. After listening for a long time, he finally found out some information. This group of 22 people were not people from Nanxing, Zhongzhou, or Dongqing. They were people from Xichang who rarely appeared. Xichang? I don't have any impression of him. What surprised lucky emperor and salted fish even more was that the two people sitting under the shade of the tree, dressed in simple clothes, were actually princes and princesses. He didn't hear wrongly. She was from the royal family, a prince and a concubine. Listening to their conversation, they seemed to be twin siblings from the same mother. However, what were the princes and princesses of Xichang doing in Dongqing? Luck King instantly came up with a conspiracy theory. Even though he had a big imagination, it was still not as big as reality. The purpose of their visit was unexpected. They were sent by the Xichang royal family to make peace through marriage. That's right, it's a marriage. Luck King and the 5 million salted fish were all speechless. What kind of royal marriage was this? Including the princes and princesses, there were only 22 people in the group. Apart from these two members of the royal family who were dressed rather cleanly, but the fabric had faded from starching, the rest were unkempt and dirty. Their clothes were tattered and they were sallow and emaciated. Even if they were said to be refugees, some people would believe them. Could it be that they were robbed on the way to make peace through marriage? In Luck King's understanding, the royal family was the representation of wealth, power, and influence. Their reputation would never be shabby. These two princes and princesses were in such a miserable state. They most likely met with misfortune along the way. Little did they know that they were just that poor. The group rested for a while before getting up again. Luck King watched as a few guards forced and threatened them to borrow a few fishing boats from the nearby fishermen. The 22 people squeezed onto the boat. Looking at the swaying boat and the rippling surface of the water, Luck King secretly hugged himself tightly. Because this body was a guard, his hearing was good. He could vaguely hear the conversation between the royal siblings coming from the cabin. Apart from the useless business compliments, the rest of the content was more explosive. For example, the prince's marriage partner was actually their streamer. The salted fishes were stunned. They all went to make fun of Jiang Pingji. The bullet screen completely filled her field of vision. Jiang Pingji was half lying by the river fishing. The fish basket beside her was empty. Not to mention fish, there was not even a fish scale. The salted fishes did not understand. Jiang Pingji had never caught any fish in so many years. Why did she not get tired of fishing? Jiang Pingji closed her eyes and rested while fishing. The fishing rod was sandwiched between her head and shoulder. She supported the side of her head with her right hand, and the bamboo hat on her head covered most of her face. When she heard the commotion and looked at the bullet screen, she found that the screen was full of scum, and my heart aches for Zixiao. Jiang Pingji was speechless. What happened? She followed the bullet screen to look at the screen of Luck King's son's streaming room. She found that the bullet screen was also full of all kinds of comments. Jiang Pingji rubbed her brows. She still did not understand what had happened. After the salted fish's heated explanation, Jiang Pingji then understood that a group of people claimed to be the royal family of Xichang and wanted to make a marriage alliance with her. What the hell is this? When it was close to sunset, Jiang Pingji carried the empty fish basket back. She did not expect to be caught red-handed by the people who were waiting for her. "Cough, you're all here. Did something big happen?" Feng Zhen and the others looked at each other. Finally, they chose Wei Ci to hand over the diplomatic letter. Jiang Pingji took the old second-hand bamboo scroll, opened it and read it quickly. Excluding all kinds of useless greetings and airs, the core meaning was that the Emperor of Xichang intended to bestow his son to Jiang Pingji as a concubine in order to maintain good relations between the two countries. At the same time, he hinted at how good his son was. He hoped that his future daughter-in-law would lend him troops to help him quell the war in Xichang. Then Xichang and Dongqing would help each other and establish eternal diplomatic relations. The other party also promised all kinds of benefits. As long as Jiang Pingji lent him troops and he conquered Xichang, all these benefits would be fulfilled. Not to mention that Dongqing and Xichang were in the east and west, separated by Zhongzhou. How could they help each other? She could not understand the reason why they would bestow their son to Jiang Pingji as a concubine. It was said that the prince was the second son of the Empress. Liar. Jiang Pingji looked at it again and came to such a conclusion. Wei Ci smiled bitterly and said, "If it's a liar, we dare not present it to you. So it's true? It's not that I don't believe it. The problem is that this thing is very fake." Jiang Pingji revealed a trace of astonishment. Which country's emperor would give away the legitimate son of the Empress in exchange for troops? Although Xichang is the weakest among the 5 countries, it shouldn't be in such dire straits. Wei Ci said, "Maybe you'll understand when you meet him personally." Chapter 1603. Regardless of whether it was Jiang Pingji or the 5 million idle fish in the streaming room, in their inherent impression, the royal family would not be stingy with their image no matter how poor they were. After all, the royal family could not afford to lose face. Even if their faces were swollen, they would still have to pretend to be fat. However, the envoy from Xichang country had taught them a lesson. Regardless of their intentions for coming, since they were the envoy of a country, Jiang Pingji could not neglect them. Before meeting people, she had to take a bath and change her clothes. She could not possibly meet people in a sackcloth. Those who did not know better would think that she was a fisherwoman from some fishing village. Jiang Pingji closed the view of the main streaming room and went to wash up. The idle fish were bored, so they gathered in Oh Huang's streaming room to chat and find out about the enemy's situation. They were all loyal fans of the Pink CCP. They would not allow a stranger to come between them. Naturally, Oh Huang thought so too. He did not have a good impression of the 2 descendants of the royal family. Although the 2 of them were in dire straits, Their attitudes were very proper, as if they were high and mighty nobles. In the eyes of those who liked them, they might praise them for not breaking their pride despite falling into the dust, saying that they did not bring shame to the royal family. In the eyes of those who did not like them, this was pretentious. They were not even as good as the people of Wanzhou. How could they pretend to be the descendants of the royal family? All of you can leave. There is no need for you to serve here. The second prince looked at the attire in the room and then at the appearance of his entourage. He was displeased, but at the same time he felt a little inferior. The servants and guards they brought were not presentable. Not to mention that they were covered in dirt, even the ordinary refugees were cleaner than them. The guards were even more so. The straw sandals on their feet were worn out, but they were not willing to change them. Their feet were covered in blood and their toes were slightly deformed. Their image was very different from that of the envoy from Xichang country. Not only did they not bring glory to the faces of the two favored sons of heaven, but they also exposed their shortcomings. Their faces were burning hot. They had lost face in front of their future wives and were looked down upon. The servants responded in a daze. Only the European emperor sneered in his heart. The streamer is such a good person. Lucky Emperor and the other guards were arranged to rest in the servants' quarters. Someone even prepared clean clothes, hot water and food for them. Lucky Emperor did not know how long it had been since he was full. When Lucky Emperor smelled the aroma of food, his stomach began to rumble. His hands seemed to be out of his control and he ate a big bowl of rice as fast as he could. The dishes on the dining table were all gone. After finishing them, he still felt that there was space in his stomach. He could eat another portion. "I'm starving." At the same time, the Xichang prince and the Empress concubine were also treated as honored guests. The maidservant brought in a few plates with a set of neatly folded women's clothes and accessories. Even though it wasn't made according to the imperial family specifications, it was still something that only the daughters of aristocratic families had the right to wear. The Empress concubine looked as cold as ice, but her eyes constantly swept over the plates. Her gaze revealed her love and determination to win. When she was born, the Xichang imperial family was not yet in such dire straits. She also enjoyed 7 or 8 years of wealth and glory. Her food, clothing and housing were all the best in the world. As the most favored Empress concubine, her father would spend tens of thousands of taels of silver to celebrate her birthday. Whatever she wanted, her father would give it to her. However, these good days did not last for long. A few years ago, Xichang country was torn apart. The various factions fought and killed each other. Every few days there would be an uprising. The number of feudal lords with names also increased day by day. The Xichang imperial family was overthrown in one fell swoop. Their family, along with a few loyal ministers, were forced to flee in all directions. Their lives became worse and worse. They were so poor that they had to eat tree bark. No one knew that in order to gather the expenses for these 20 people's visit, those old ministers even took out their coffins. Her father even reluctantly sold his infertile concubines to the red light district to earn money. Thinking of her father and mother's lives, and then looking at the brocade clothes and jewelry that the servants and maids brought over, the Empress concubine felt all sorts of emotions churn in her chest. She had long reached marriageable age. Logically speaking, she should be preparing for marriage. However, the current imperial family did not even have the capital to make a comeback. Who could she marry? Could it be that she had to marry those Xichang rebels who called themselves feudal lords in exchange for some gold and silver? By chance, she had heard of her father's plans from her mother. Her mind had become active. She also wanted to go through a marriage alliance. Empress Xichang said, "You are a woman and so is Lu Shi. How can you compare to your second brother? I heard that Lu Shi has no children and doesn't even have a servant by his side. Who knows if he's ill or if he has a penchant for mirrors," said the Empress concubine. In the chaos of the 16 kingdoms, weren't there a pair of siblings who monopolized the emperor's favor? Taking a step back, if Lu Shi didn't have a penchant for mirrors, I would be willing to marry the most useful official in her camp. In the future I can also win over my husband and help second brother. The Xichang Empress could not make up her mind and could only tell her daughter's words to her husband. When the emperor heard this, he felt that his daughter's words were very reasonable. It was not enough for him to send his son over to be a concubine. After all, his position would not be stable without an heir. If an important official married the Empress concubine and became his son-in-law, he would be able to win over an important ally. Before he gave birth to an heir, his son would be able to straighten his back. In addition, this pair of children was a rare pair of dragon and phoenix twins. They were the auspicious sign of a dragon and phoenix, and their importance was even greater. To outsiders, it was absurd for the Emperor of Xichang to send his children out in exchange for a rich country's army. They did not know that this opportunity had been snatched by this pair of siblings. The Emperor of Xichang did not tolerate women. Not all of the concubines in the palace were from gentry families. 80% of them were chosen from the common people. Thus, there were many children born of ordinary concubines. They all stared at this opportunity. She did not know what the genes of the royal family were. Regardless of gender, they were all very good-looking. In order to exchange for money and provisions, the Emperor of Xichang had sent out a few of the younger Empress concubines. As the only daughter of the first wife, she was of noble birth and had a pure bloodline. She could not be reduced to such an unbearable state. Her thoughts flipped and the scenes of the past flashed through her mind. The Empress concubine took a deep breath and slightly opened her arms. She raised her chin slightly. A few maids came forward to undress her and help her bathe. This scene made her think of the days when she lived a life of luxury. No matter what, this trip must be successful. A similar situation happened to the prince, but his expression was even more indifferent. Occasionally, a hint of humiliation flashed through his eyes. The two of them needed more than 2 hours to bathe and change. Jiang Pingji's battle bath only took 2 to 3 minutes. She changed her clothes early and opened the main streaming room. She ate melon seeds and let the maids comb her hair. She listened to the maids and attendants report on the reactions of the two heavenly favored ones. After Jiang Pingji heard this, her expression was indescribable. Chapter 1604. Jiang Pingji mentioned this to everyone. Interesting things should be shared with everyone. Feng Zhen glanced at the expressionless Wei Xi and smiled at the people of Xichang. He said, "Perhaps that's what they think. Xichang is not like Dongqing. Their understanding of the Lord is limited to a few words. They may not have a deeper understanding. That Xichang prince is a legitimate son. How can he not have some ambition and strategy? How can it be compared to winning over the Lord and slowly making her focus on love so that he can take the opportunity to make her a mere figurehead?" Wei Xi laughed coldly. "Shameless. Zixiao, you don't believe me?" Feng Zhen argued. Zixiao is well-read and well-versed in the past and present. Haven't you seen the examples in the history books of those who relied on pleasing the Yu family to accumulate power? Once they soared, they kicked away their wives. When the later generations mention them, they only praise the man for having good luck, forbearance, and courage. They never mention that he stepped on the Yu family and made them a mere figurehead. How can this be considered shameless? Feng Zhen saw it clearly. Or rather, as a man, he knew the ambitions and thoughts of men best. Everyone says that the merits and demerits are judged by the later generations. But the person who wrote this history was the historian of the current era. The basis of the later generation's judgment is also based on the content written by the historian. Is there any lack of writing style? If the historian is given a pen, black can be written as white, white can be written as black. Seeing Wei Xi's gloomy face, Feng Zhen added with a smile, "If that Xichang prince is ambitious, he first flatters the Lord to weaken her guard, then attacks her heart with love and luckily gives birth to a child. Who else can the Lord's great family business be passed on to?" Wei Xi said, "He has no self-awareness." Feng Zhen laughed. No matter how self-aware he is, before he hits a wall, his thoughts are always optimistic. Jiang Pingji nibbled on melon seeds and watched Feng Zhen rebuke Wei Xi. She couldn't help but speak up. "Enough. With just a few words, you make me seem like a muddle-headed lord who is obsessed with beauty. Am I that kind of person? In terms of scheming, a young lad dares to show off in front of an expert? Regardless of whether the Xichang prince was ambitious or not, one would know once they saw him. It's best if he has no ambition, but if he does, he needs to be taught a lesson." Jiang Pingji snorted coldly and ate a few more melon seeds. Feng Zhen glanced at his master resentfully. Even if she was protective of her child, she should not be this protective. He had only said a few words and had not bullied Wei Xi much, but she could not wait to jump out. Feng Zhen cursed in his heart, but on the surface he respectfully bowed and said, "My lord is wise and mighty." Naturally, he would not be blinded by mere beauty. Jiang Pingji asked, "Then what are you worried about?" That prince of Xichang, although he looks young and immature, he already has the potential to be a celestial being. I'm afraid that if my lord sees him in person then... Fengzhen was a playboy, but he rarely ran to Jiang Pingji to court death. Even if he did, his desire to live would allow him to turn the situation around. For example, this time he changed his tone midway and stiffly bowed to the end. He righteously and sternly said, "I acted on my own accord, my lord, please punish me." Jiang Pingji put on a fake smile. Fengzhen had said everything he needed to say, and his intentions were for her own good. If Jiang Pingji pursued the matter, she would be making a fuss out of nothing. That's enough. What kind of celestial potential can a 16 or 17-year-old boy have? Everyone is a Daoist and has seen many things, but now it seems that his skills are still shallow. How can a little kid stir up turbulent waves? There's an old saying that looks good are all the same, but interesting souls are one in a million. What's the use of having a face? I'd rather put it at home as a vase. Of course, Jiang Pingji had seen the Prince of Xichang. The salted fish even nitpicked at the boy and criticized him, saying that his nose was short, fat, and that his ability was not good. Jiang Pingji just watched them fool around. She did not expect Fengzhen to interfere. Fengzhen carefully pondered Jiang Pingji's words and deeply felt that his lord had a sharp tongue. Opposite her, Wei Xi lowered his head slightly, but the corners of his mouth seemed to be curving upwards. Fengzhen. He could not afford to offend her. As expected, the man of the Demon King had a backer. Fengzhen could not help but say mischievously, "Your subject's skills are still shallow. I am ashamed to display my slight skill in front of my lord." Jiang Pingji choked on his words. She wanted to beat Fengzhen to death. Wasn't he sarcastically mocking Jiang Pingji for having seen many things and having profound skills? There are thousands of beauties in the world. There's no need to read them all. It's enough to see the most beautiful colors. Zisher doesn't understand. It's better to value quality than quantity. Fengzhen, as a strategist, he had lost to his lord in verbal sparring. It seemed that he was not skilled enough in his work. Jiang Pingji said to the crowd, "You guys stay and take a look too. See what kind of heavenly beauty has caught Zisher's eye." Fengzhen, "My lord, are you done yet? Didn't you just defend your precious darling? Are you holding a grudge?" Xianxia was gloating at the side. Fengzhen did not hear him snicker. After waiting for a while, when Jiang Pingji's tea had cooled a few times, the two pampered descendants of the royal family finally arrived in a hurry. Fengzhen had no problem with his aesthetics. Whether it was the Xichang prince or the Xichang emperor's concubine, their looks were both top-notch. Even though they had been living in dire straits for the past few years, the education they had received from the royal family had been engraved into their bones. After washing up, she changed into brocade clothes and dressed herself up. Her originally bare face was now perfect. Indeed, clothes make the man. The beauty of Jiang Pingji's body was needless to say. She had a unique temperament. Even though she did not have the usual gentleness and weakness of a normal woman, she had a different kind of beauty. Her good looks and the aura of someone in a superior position caught the attention of the Xichang prince at a glance. He had thought that Jiang Pingji was a woman with vulgar speech and unsightly looks. After all, she often hung out with the military warriors and went to war all year round. She must not have taken good care of her looks. She might have been born rough and ugly. That's why she became an old leftover woman. Now that he looked at her, other than her slightly heroic appearance, he could not find anything wrong with her. The Xichang prince slightly suppressed the humiliation of being given as a concubine by his father as an object. The siblings bowed to Jiang Pingji. It was very pleasing to the eye. As someone who valued appearances, Jiang Pingji was unusually displeased. Even though her reputation to the outside world was bad, she did not have the two traits of being good, lustful, or being open to both men and women, right? Dongqing and Xichang are separated by thousands of mountains. Why have the two royal descendants come all the way here? Qiguanrang, Fengzhen, and Xianxia were three petty people. Jiang Pingji was not an open-minded person. She was especially petty and vengeful when it came to certain matters. Because of their ambitions, Fengzhen's interruption, and Wei Xi's reaction, she did not have a good impression of the siblings. She had clearly seen the letter written by the Xichang emperor, but she pretended not to know and allowed the two to say it in public. A dignified prince of a country was sent to be a concubine. He had to serve others with his looks. Which man with a strong sense of pride could stand it? As expected, the expression on the Xichang prince's face changed on the spot. He suppressed his rapidly fluctuating emotions and thought for a while. He deliberated over his answer and tried to quote from the classics to draw on the friendship between Xichang and Dongqing. He expressed his purpose of coming in a very subtle manner and saved some face. Chapter 1605. Although the Xichang prince was scheming, he was still a 16 or 17-year-old youth. Not to mention in Jiang Pingji's eyes, even in the eyes of Qi Kuang and Li Yun, his methods were not enough. His acting skills were not bad, but he had not learned how to hide his ambition perfectly. Although it was only for a moment, everyone saw the surprise and scheming in his eyes when he looked at Jiang Pingji. Of course, the Xichang prince was not completely useless. He had fooled 99% of the 5 million idle people in the streaming room. Life was like a drama, it all depended on acting skills. The idle people were used to watching all kinds of stingy TV dramas. Their expectations for acting skills were greatly reduced. The Xichang prince's disguise was perfect in their eyes. If not for their sharp eyes, no one would be able to discover that this handsome and harmless youth had a black heart. Of course, it was possible that the filter brought about by his good looks made the idle people let their guard down. Jiang Pingji looked serious, but she listened to the Xichang prince's words absent-mindedly. The corners of her lips curled into a faint smile. When she looked at someone seriously, no matter who it was, that person could feel the sincerity in her eyes. It was as if those eyes could only accommodate one person. The Xichang prince was no exception. When he noticed Jiang Pingji's gaze, his heart overflowed with joy. Since the defeat of the Xichang royal family, it was the first time he was so grateful for this face. Otherwise, how could he attract a woman who sat in a high position? The Xichang emperor's concubine saw this. She did not show it on her face, but she felt somewhat complicated. If her twin brother caught Jiang Pingji's eye, he would definitely have a meteoric rise in the future. However, she was a woman and could not compete with a man for a woman's favor. What the Xichang emperor's concubine said to the Empress was just an excuse to convince the other party. The Xichang emperor's true goal was to marry an important official under Jiang Pingji and become the legal wife. She had previously sent someone to inquire. Most of the important officials under Jiang Pingji were in their 30s or 40s. Their children could all discuss marriage, but there was one exception. This person was none other than Wei Zixiao. He was over 30 years old and still unmarried. It was not known if he liked men or if he had a problem with his body and was infertile. This was nothing to the Xichang emperor's concubine. She only wanted his position, not his body. While her brother and Jiang Pingji were conversing, the emperor's concubine's sharp eyes found Wei Xi. Although there was no introduction, it was not difficult for Wei Xi to recognize him. Just like what the others had said, at a glance, the scholar with the best looks and the most upright temperament was Wei Xi. With just a glance, the Xichang Empress concubine was very satisfied with her future husband. Regardless of whether the other party had a hidden illness or not, based on Wei Xi's face, talent, self-restraint, status and power, she would not be at a disadvantage. The princess of Xichang was very careful, but how could she escape Jiang Pingji's eyes? She snorted coldly in her heart, but on the surface she was smiling and trying to get information out of him. She acted as if she was very satisfied with the prince of Xichang. Not only was she concerned about his experiences along the way, but she was also probing the situation in Xichang. The prince of Xichang took the opportunity to climb up the ladder. He emphasized on how the emperor of Xichang had been persecuted by rebels and traitors, and how he had worked hard for the great cause of the country. It was really heartbreaking for those who heard it. Everyone present was moved. Jiang Pingji also acted as if she was moved. Following the wishes of the Xichang prince, she mentioned marriage to strengthen the friendship between the two countries. Father often mentions to people that my sister has reached marriageable age, but in Xichang there are rebels and traitors in power. There are no suitable men for her to marry. He is very worried about this. The prince of Xichang was also treacherous. He did not mention his own marriage but instead mentioned his sister's. He had the image of a good brother who was worried about his sister's marriage. At the same time he flattered Jiang Pingji and achieved his goal. I heard that there are many heroes in the Lanting camp. If the two families can be on good terms, the friendship between the two countries will be even stronger. In this way, father and mother will not have to worry about my sister's marriage. Jiang Pingji said, "This is a good thing, but Most of the officials in my camp are old and have wives. It is not good to let Her Highness suffer. Those who are of suitable age such as Qin Fengjing also have a marriage agreement set by his late father. It is not good to break it and marry someone else. In this case I am afraid this marriage will not go through. I see that the princess is as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as the moon. I am afraid that even a deity is not as beautiful as you. Marriage cannot be taken lightly. The Prince of Xichang was indeed the princess's twin brother. He had a private discussion with the princess and they both set their sights on Wei Xi. Even if she were to marry a minister in a chaotic world as the princess, she could not be a concubine. Wei Xi was quite suitable. The Prince of Xichang said, "There is one person in the Lanting camp who is very suitable." Jiang Pingji asked under the strange gazes of the crowd, "Who? Why don't I know?" The Prince of Xichang said, "This person is Master Wei Zixiao. I heard that he is young and talented. He has followed the Lanting Duke to war for more than 10 years and is very famous. He has no concubines at home and is only 10 years older than my sister. Both of their looks are rare in the world. How can they not be a good match?" The crowd was silent. The idle people were so shocked that they threw away the melons in their hands and forgot how to send bullet screens. What did these two treasures from Xichang say? "Tudu Feiqiu, someone wake me up. Did I hear wrongly? Who has this little prince taken a fancy to?" Lipstick gatherer. Isn't it good to be alive? Why do you have to seek death? Strive to make money. Taking a fancy to the streamer is better than taking a fancy to Beauty Ci. If he takes a fancy to the streamer he will only be attacked by Beauty Ci. If he takes a fancy to Beauty Ci he will be beaten to a pulp by the streamer. No one can stop him. Is this Prince of Xichang here for a marriage alliance or to deliver his head? Not a good match, not a good match. Jiang Pingji sneered and dropped a bomb. He is a good match for me. The crowd was speechless. They knew that their lord spoke coquettishly, but they did not expect her to be this coquettish. They looked at the prince and the princess of Xichang in unison. They saw that their expressions were stiff and seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Jiang Pingji acted as if nothing had happened and said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" The Prince of Xichang's lips trembled because he realized that he had misunderstood Jiang Pingji's gaze. She had taken a fancy to his sister, a woman of the same sex? No wonder. No wonder the most powerful duke in the world, Lu Shi, was still single and childless. He was actually a pervert who had a penchant for mirror grinding. The Princess of Xichang also looked as if she had been struck by lightning. Although she had said that the siblings would serve one person, she did not say that they would serve a woman. The siblings' faces were pale. Jiang Pingji seemed to be unaware. Her gaze fell on the Princess of Xichang. The three of them looked at each other in silence. The situation was somewhat out of control. The Prince of Xichang awkwardly found a lame excuse to leave and did not give an accurate reply. After the two of them left, Jiang Pingji laughed so hard that she almost rolled on the ground. "You've taken a fancy to Zixiao? Don't you know how many heads you have on your neck?" Jiang Pingji said mischievously. She never expected that someone would take it seriously. Chapter 1606. It wasn't that Li Yun didn't notice the signs between his lord and Wei Ci, but the two of them interacted like an ordinary ruler and official. They didn't interact too ambiguously with the outside world. Li Yun's suspicions stopped at speculation. There was no concrete proof. For example, it was no different from the groundless entertainment circle gossip in the salted fish dimension. He suspected that the two of them were having an affair, but the officials didn't say anything. According to Li Yun's temperament, before there was any concrete proof or the two of them personally admitting it, he was unwilling to make presumptuous speculations and tarnish their reputations. Therefore, when Jiang Pingji said the words, "She's a good match for me," Li Yun automatically changed the subject to Xichang's princess. This was the end of him. His lord liked women. This was a concrete proof given by the officials. Li Yun was naturally at a loss. He hit a wall with Jiang Pingji. His lord wasn't willing to listen to his advice. He could only frown and retreat with a heavy heart. "It's better to discuss this matter with the military advisors," Li Yun muttered. He stopped in his tracks and changed his route to look for Yang Si and the others. Coincidentally, Yang Si, Fengjing, and Wei Ci were discussing something in the pavilion. Li Yun strode over and called out from afar, "Military advisor." The three of them could be called military advisors, so they all looked at Li Yun. "Hanmei, why do you look so anxious?" Wei Ci brewed a cup of tea for Li Yun. The latter bowed and sat down on an empty mat, a thin layer of sweat on his forehead. Li Yun said, "Today, regarding the matter between Xichang's princess and the lord, are the 3 military advisors not anxious?" The 3 of them looked at each other. Wei Xi chose to remain silent. Li Yun was a beat slower and didn't notice the strange atmosphere in the pavilion. Li Yun was very anxious. He blabbered on and on. His anxious expression wasn't fake at all. This made the 3 of them look even weirder. They heard Li Yun say, "The Lord still doesn't have an heir at such an age. I've been anxious for a long time. Without an heir, who will the world be handed over to? Xichang's princess, to put it nicely, is a respectful title. To put it bluntly, she's just a stray dog. What virtue or ability does she have to be worthy of the Lord? Not to mention obstructing the Lord's hegemony. Even if I have to die a horrible death, I will not let a witch bewitch her." Li Yun's words were powerful and resonant. If it wasn't for his self-restraint, Bai Ning and the rest would have slammed the tea table. It was not that Li Yun was obsessed with inheriting the bloodline, but it depended on who it was. Was his lord an ordinary person? No. She was very likely to be the future ruler of the world, a person who would truly rule over the world. Her children were not only the continuation of her family's bloodline, but also the continuation of the world's unification and peace. Without an heir, it meant that no one could continue the Lord's ideals of world peace. It meant that the peace they fought for with their lives would only last for a moment. This was what Li Yun did not want to see. If the fruits of victory were plucked by unrelated people, he would be so angry that he would vomit blood. Xianxia had a hard time holding back his laughter. He glanced meaningfully at Wei Xi as he asked Li Yun, "So what does Han Mei plan to do? If the Lord really likes that Xichang's Empress concubine, it's fine to treat her as a plaything. If she bewitches you, I'm afraid you'll have to resort to some means." Li Yun narrowed his eyes and gave a reply that surprised the 3 people present. "If the Lord pursues this, I will use my life to atone for it." Li Yun's seriousness made him retract his frivolous attitude. His gaze revealed a hint of surprise, as if he was a scholar who had been away for 3 days. Wei Xi found an excuse to get up and leave, lest the following conversation increase the awkwardness. Seeing that Wei Xi had left, Fengzhen revealed his intentions to Li Yun. Han Mei, say. Fengzhen laughed. "Think carefully about the conversation between the Lord and the Xichang prince. The Xichang prince said that the Empress concubine and Zixiao are a good match. The Lord said that they are not a good match, but the Empress concubine and the Lord are a good match." Li Yun recalled with a puzzled expression and sighed. "The Lord said this publicly. In the future, when the historians write about it, I don't know how they will arrange it." Fengzhen and Xianxia were helpless. Or rather, Li Yun was not the only one who thought the same as Li Yun. Xianxia said, "The Lord said, not a good match, but she is a good match for me." "Who is a good match for her?" Li Yun said naturally, "The Empress concubine of Xichang." Xianxia couldn't help but facepalm. Seeing this, Li Yun suddenly realized that he seemed to have misunderstood something. According to the preamble, the Lord's words could be understood as, "The Empress concubine of Xichang and I are a good match," but it could also be understood as, "Zixiao and I are a good match." His Lord's domineering aura was too strong. Li Yun subconsciously thought of her as a strong person, a ruler, and not a female strong person or female ruler. Therefore, when he heard the Lord's words, he would rather believe that the Lord had a penchant for polishing mirrors than think of another interpretation. Thinking of Wei Xi, who had just left, Li Yun suddenly raised his hand to cover his face. No wonder military advisor Wei had to find an excuse to leave. He probably didn't want him to be too embarrassed. This general is ashamed. Li Yun felt that his lord's unspoken rules with the military advisor were much easier to accept than polishing mirrors and lesbianism. Xianxia said, "There's nothing to be ashamed of. You're not the only one who thinks so." The 2 from Xichang also misunderstood. His lord's style was also strange. She was obviously a woman, but everyone thought that the possibility of her liking women was higher than men. Li Yun asked, "Both military advisors know about it?" "My lord." Xianxia waved his hand and said, "My lord didn't personally admit it. You and I have kept this matter to ourselves. It's good that we are aware of it. This isn't trying to cover it up, it's just that my lord's temperament. She's determined to protect Zixiao. Keeping it a secret is also good for Zixiao, making fewer enemies." It was good that a few important officials knew about it. The more people who knew about it, the more plots and schemes against Wuxia would be. There was nothing in the world that everyone liked, even gold and silver. There were still people who despised them for having the stench of money. Wuxia's charm couldn't compare to gold and silver. If he took the open road, it would instead be a death sentence for him. Liam was puzzled. Since you want to protect Zhou, why did my lord say this today? Xianxia asked in reply, wouldn't Han Mei misunderstand? Even you are like this, let alone outsiders. It seemed like she was coming out of the closet, but in fact, wasn't it a confession for Wuxia to hear? It was so sweet that it stuck to the teeth. Liam was worried again. Sai, if this matter is recorded in the history books, I don't know how many people will misunderstand my lord. Xianxia showed off the flirtatious words he learned from Jiang Pingji. Bearing the misunderstandings of the world to whisper sweet nothings to one person, the rancid smell of love. After thinking about it carefully, Xianxia was sure that his lord's couple had the highest sugar content, enough to cause diabetes. Then, how should we deal with the two from Xichang? My lord is generous to everything but this matter. She's narrow-minded. The two from Xichang should pray for their own good. For example, Chapter 1607. To avoid being cursed, even if Jiang Pingji disliked the two of them, she could not kill them with one slash. However, she could not kill them herself, but it did not mean that she could not kill them with a borrowed knife. Whether it was the ambition that the two of them showed or their coveting of Wuxia and herself, Jiang Pingji could not tolerate them. Before that, Jiang Pingji wanted to see the unlucky O Huang, who had suffered a lot this time. I actually saw a live streamer. Is it okay for you to see me like this? The O Huang looked left and right and found that there was no one else around except him and Jiang Pingji. He then felt relieved. Streamer, your Zhixiao is too jealous. It's over if he sees us. Zhixiao has always been kind. He's not as scary as you say. Your fan filter for CI and beauty is as thick as Earth's. Although Wuxia did not appear many times, the salted fish army was not blind. As the saying goes, the onlookers see the game more clearly. The salted fish army thought that they knew Wuxia's nature better than Jiang Pingji. It was a case of cutting black and white. Jiang Pingji turned over and jumped off the beam. She smiled and took out a bag of pastries from her sleeve. It was a treat for the children. I thought it would be an expensive gift such as gold, silver or jewelry. The O Huang laughed and joked. At least it's a collection of autographs from the little princess under your account. Only such things have a commemorative value. You only give me a bag of pastries. It'll be gone after I eat it. Jiang Pingji said, I'm not single. Zhixiao still depends on me to support him. How can I have so much spare money? The O Huang could not help but cover his face and said, is this the live version of dog food? The sour smell of love makes me so jealous that I feel like I'm about to explode. 12 hours passed quickly and the lucky emperor did not stay for too long. That night, the O Huang posted the gifts from Jiang Pingji on Weibo. Due to the limitations of the production process, the pastries did not look exquisite, but it did not affect their taste at all. Some people were envious while others argued. They sourly said that Jiang Pingji was stingy. She was the most powerful feudal lord, but she only gave him a bag of pastries. Did she think that everyone had never eaten pastries since they were young? Could ancient craftsmanship compare to modern times? Jiang Pingji was considered to have a third of the people in the world. Giving some gold, silver and jewelry was like giving a grain of sand to a mountain. Sinji. Faced with these anti-fans comments, Lucky King posted another Weibo post. Gao Gao Ping CCP Big Flag. I don't think the value of the gift lies in how much it can be sold for or how much profit it can make. The purpose of Dream of 1,000 Years is not to let everyone travel back in time to make money. The most important thing is the experience. That is the real value. The host was a very nice person. Although she only sent pastries, she sent them personally. In addition, the host is a considerate person. I will never regret being a fan of her in this life. There was also a mosaic on the Weibo post. It turned out that there was a short letter in the package of the pastry. The gist of it was that she remembered that O Huang had left a message on the bullet screen, saying that she was worried about not being able to find a job after graduating next year. Jiang Pingji knew that O Huang majored in wheat and food, so she specially looked for a few ancient recipes for making local desserts and snacks in Zhangzhou. It might help her start a business. At the end he even added, "Don't be lost, the future is yet to come." Seeing this, the group of anti-fans shut up. It must be fake. Someone could not help but mutter. There were 5 million viewers in the streaming room every day, and there were tens of millions of bullet screen comments. How could she remember what Oh Huang had said? Not only did she remember, but she also prepared the best gift. It was true that gold, silver, and jewelry could bring Oh Huang huge profits in a short period of time, but it also meant that he would lose his motivation and passion for life. It was better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish. Helping Oh Huang start a business was also very considerate. The group of salted fish were moved to tears. Meeting such a flirtatious person was going to make them gay for the rest of their lives. Jiang Pingji did not take it to heart. Or perhaps it was nothing more than normal for her. How did the two princes of Xichang react? Of all people, they had their eyes on the flesh that she was protecting. Did they really think that Jiang Pingji was a broad-minded person? The servant reported truthfully. The Xichang emperor's concubine and the prince retreated in embarrassment. The more they thought about it, the more upset they felt. Even after racking their brains, they did not expect that Lu Lanting was a pervert with a fetish for erotic lenses. Brother, think of a way. Do you really want me to give myself to this person? The Xichang emperor's concubine did not mind marrying an official, but she did mind marrying a woman. Just the thought of physical contact made her nauseous. The Xichang emperor's mind was in a whirl. He did not believe that his charm as a man could not compare to his sister's. If you don't obey, will Lu Xi let us go? The Xichang emperor's concubine's face turned pale, but she did not dare to act recklessly. The prince said, "It doesn't matter whether Lu Xi is a man or a woman. What's important is that he has power and has troops. Who in the world is not afraid of him? If you can win her favor, Imperial Father will be able to use her troops to eradicate the traitors and successfully restore the country. When that time comes, you will have the support of Xichang. Lu Xi will make you an official because of this. What are you not willing to do?" The emperor's concubine said, "How can two women give birth to a child?" The prince said, "After you win her over, you can arrange for someone else to help you secure her favor in the future." The brother and sister had different thoughts. Jiang Pingji listened to them and laughed so hard that she almost choked. These two siblings are really too interesting. They've only been here for a short while, but I've already laughed a few times. Jiang Pingji said, "They are indeed the children of the proper palace. They are very familiar with the basic operations and procedures of palace intrigue. If I wasn't the person involved, I would have believed them." However, no matter how interesting they were, they could not be an eyesore. Jiang Pingji was busy fighting the Enchui of Nanxing. How would she have the time to waste on these two naive children? The next day, just as the emperor's concubine had made up her mind to agree to Jiang Pingji's request, the latter went back on her word. The reason was also very honorable. She was about to fight the Enchui and did not have extra troops and money to send on an expedition to Xichang. They came at the wrong time. The Xichang emperor's concubine's face turned pale. The emperor's concubine was so angry that she almost vomited blood. However, Jiang Pingji rejected them openly. There was no room for negotiation. They could only accept reality. The emperor's concubine suspected that Jiang Pingji was angry because she could not have her. However, when she tactfully suggested that she was willing to serve Jiang Pingji, the latter actually feigned ignorance and rejected her with a straight face. This made the emperor's concubine lose face. She was embarrassed and angry. They came in a hurry and left in a hurry. When the Xichang emperor's concubine left, Jiang Pingji gave them a batch of money. It was enough for them to return to Xichang. However, would they go back obediently? Of course not. According to their private inquiries, Jiang Pingji was extremely fearful of Enchui. There were faint signs that she was not his match. If Jiang Pingji was unwilling to send troops, then they would turn around and ask Enchui for help. Chapter 1608. I understand. You may leave. Upon receiving news that the Xichang emperor and prince did not return to Xichang obediently but instead changed to Nanxing, Jiang Pingji knew what they were planning. Even though she had played a part in guiding them, the cooperation between the two of them was beyond her expectations. Xichang has been at war for a long time. These two must have suffered for a few years. Why are they still so ignorant? Jiang Pingji was rather surprised. Who didn't know that she and Enchui were about to go to war? Under such circumstances, regardless of whether Jiang Pingji or Enchui had the upper hand, they needed more troops as bargaining chips. They could not spare any strength to help Xichang, which was separated by Zhongzhou. They could not even take care of themselves. How could they have the leisure to help others? Taking a step back, what was in it for them to help Xichang? Don't listen to the Xichang Emperor's promises of all kinds of benefits. He would fulfill them as soon as he restored his country. All the verbal benefits were fake. They were separated by thousands of mountains and rivers. Whether or not they fulfilled their promises depended on their mood. In the face of great benefits, so-called integrity, especially between countries, was nonsense. No matter how nice the Xichang Emperor's promises were, they were just empty promises. In Jiang Pingji's eyes, they were not worth a single soldier. Wuxia was helping Jiang Pingji grind ink. Seeing that a layer of ink had formed on the ink stone, the shade was just right, he said, "Food and lust are part of human nature. Even saints are like this, let alone ordinary people. There are many people in this world who take risks for beauty. There's nothing strange about it." Are you saying that the two in Xichang are confident in their beauty and think that they are worth tens of thousands of troops in the eyes of the feudal lords? Jiang Pingji expressed that she couldn't understand. She said, "Xichang is so weak now. With these tens of thousands of troops and horses, not to mention the Empress concubine and the prince, even if the entire royal family were to be occupied, would they still be able to resist? Why do they have to make a fake marriage alliance? They really think of themselves as humans." Wuxia was speechless. Even though the Lord's words were harsh and cruel, it was the truth. Without troops and with weak fists, who would take the mere Xichang royal family seriously? Even if they relied on their beauty to commit murder, they had to see if their backing was strong enough. The two in Xichang overestimated their beauty and value. Little did they know that in the eyes of the feudal lords in the chaotic world, they were just two goods and toys that had no additional value except for their faces. Jiang Pingji said confidently, "And Cui isn't me. If they turn around and head to Nanxing, they'll most likely be eaten until not even their bones are left. If they were to return to Xichang, they would not end up well. It would be better if Cui took a liking to them. At least they would be able to enjoy a period of glory and wealth before they die." Wuxia sighed. Of course, everyone has their own fate. I will not sympathize with them. He remembered that in his previous life, Xichang was the country with the most feudal vassals within its borders. Their sacrifices in battle were also the most tragic. Usually, a feudal vassal would be replaced by another within a few months. At first, the royal family was the target of public criticism and was often treated as a monster by the feudal lords to farm experience and fame. According to incomplete statistics, from the beginning to the end of the chaotic era, there were no less than 300 uprisings among the feudal vassals in Xichang. The largest vassal ruled half a province, while the smallest only ruled a village. With a few hundred people, they could call themselves a vassal. The royal family of Xichang was repeatedly suppressed and squeezed out of their only living space. In the end, they holed up in a barren small mountain village. The other feudal lords looked down on them and did not bother to fight. In order to make a living, the emperor farmed and the empress farmed and knitted to earn pocket money. The concubines who had given birth and had not given birth were sold to the brothel to earn money. Because he was too idle, the emperor was keen on making babies. After a few years, he had many children. The more he was born, the poorer he was, the more he had children. The key was that all the children he gave birth to were beauties. In the end, he was reduced to selling children to earn money. Currently, the royal family of Xichang had the help of some loyal old officials, so they were not in such a miserable state. But in another 2 years that might not be the case. Even though the children of the royal family of Xichang were really miserable, Wuxia could not feel sympathy. He still remembered the scene in his previous life when the emperor of Xichang sent his 3 sons of a suitable age as tributes to the emperor to be his concubines. What the hell? The emperor's body was precious. Yet he dared to covet 3 seductive little bunnies? He thought there would be no more drama in this life. He never expected the emperor of Xichang to send a pair of children over for a marriage alliance. Why didn't he see if he had the qualifications before the marriage alliance? Wuxia had already predicted the outcome of the Xichang siblings, but he didn't expect them to end up worse than he had imagined. In the end, they only had themselves to blame. And Cui was not Jiang Pingji. Even though he had damaged his body due to the years of wandering and being unable to continue the family line, other than that, his functions were normal. Naturally, he had the needs of a normal man. The princess of Xichang was a rare beauty in the world. In a flourishing age, she would be the object of pursuit by the scholars of the world. In troubled times, she would naturally be the spoils of war that men fought over for power. The princess of Xichang had naively thought that by offering herself up, she would be able to exchange for troops through marriage. Little did she know that it was just her wishful thinking. They could obtain their bodies without paying any price. There were only 22 people in Xichang. They couldn't even escape from a slightly larger bandit lair, let alone Chui, who was the strongest marquis in Nanxing. The princess of Xichang only found out about this later. And Duoshi, you're going back on your word. The next day the princess of Xichang realized that Chui's attitude was strange. Her face turned pale. In Chui's eyes the princess of Xichang was just a pretty face. She was a slave face with no power or backing. How could he tolerate her calling him by his name? Chui's face was cold. He raised his hand and pinched the woman who had been fighting with a demon an hour ago. He used so much strength that it seemed like he wanted to kill her. After a while, Chui released his hand with a cold expression. The princess of Xichang coughed violently as she took in large gulps of air. Know your place, Chui said indifferently. You didn't learn from your failure with Lu Shi. The biggest mistake of the Xichang group was to overestimate their status as royalty. They forgot that their weight didn't come from the word royalty, but from the power that the royalty held. The Xichang royalty couldn't even take care of themselves. If a pair of children suffered in Nanxing, thousands of miles away, who would stand up for them? They couldn't figure it out. Chui had no need for men, so he casually bestowed the prince to Hua Yuan. I didn't expect you to have such a taste. Liking men wasn't something that couldn't be seen in public, but Chui hadn't seen Hua Yuan show any signs of liking men. Hua Yuan laughed. That person's looks aren't bad. Everyone smiled ambiguously at Hua Yuan. Only Lu Xing, who heard the news, almost vomited blood. What kind of guy was the Lu Shi that demon Hua Yuan had imagined? He'd even imitated the real deal's weakness of being obsessed with looks. It wasn't a secret that Jiang Pingji was obsessed with looks. A little investigation would reveal that. Chapter 1609. If Jiang Pingji knew what Lu Xing was thinking, she would probably cry out that she was wronged. What did he mean by, I've done a lot of ridiculous things? He made it sound like Jiang Pingji was a lone ranger. Didn't Lu Xiaoyin collude with her several times? Her relationship with Lu Xing was not as weak as the outside world thought. In fact, Jiang Pingji's friendship with him was deeper than that of ordinary classmates in Langyi Academy. To be honest, they were probably acquaintances and bad friends. They had played together before. The two met at Jishan Hot Spring. At that time Lu Xing was not as calm as he was now. He looked like a lively and righteous young man. At the very least, Lu Xing would tell Jiang Pingji, we'll be classmates from now on. If anyone makes things difficult for you at the academy, you can tell them my name. Or something like that. But no. It was good enough that he did not beat Jiang Pingji to death. When Jiang Pingji was 12 or 13, she followed Master Yuanjing to Langyi County to study for 3 years. During the first year in Langyi County, Lu Xing did not go abroad to study. He kept his promise and took care of Jiang Pingji. Of course, he soon realized that Lu Langjun was not afraid of trouble. It was good enough that she did not take the initiative to look for trouble. For example, she heard that a woman was beautiful, so she skipped her teacher's class to peek at her. Coincidentally, the local tyrant of a small town was robbing women and forcing the old man to send his daughter to the tyrant's house to be a cheap concubine. Lu Xing was angry, but he was born in a poor family and did not dare to cause trouble. Only Jiang Pingji acted like she had eaten firecrackers and dressed as a woman without saying anything. Now that he thought about it, Lu Xing felt that he was probably blind. Why did he not realize that she was a woman at that time? Jiang Pingji disguised herself as a woman and entered the house. Not only did she beat up the local tyrant, but she also grabbed his parents and hung them on the beam of the house. She used straw ropes to whip them. While she whipped them, she asked them if they were ashamed and if they knew they were wrong. She also asked if the local tyrant's father had entered the pigsty by mistake 18 years ago. She also asked the local tyrant's mother if there was anyone with the surname Wang next door. Jiang Pingji's mother Lu Xing and a few students who skipped class leaned on the low wall and watched Jiang Pingji get rid of the tyrant. This won't kill anyone, right? Can a straw rope kill someone? Lu Xing said, isn't the point that this kid has a vicious mouth? His classmate said with lingering fear, it's indeed a bit vicious. Even a shrew on the street wouldn't be able to come up with so many tricks. Lu Xing fished out a handful of melon seeds from somewhere. His 4 classmates leaned against the low wall and watched Jiang Pingji beat them. The shells of the melon seeds fell to the ground. By the time she was done, the servant who had gone to the government office to report the case had also arrived with the bailiffs. The 5 of them picked up their clothes and slipped away. You were the one who beat him up, so why should we help you escape? If Mr. finds out, he'll be in deep trouble. Jiang Pingji said matter-of-factly, if I can't escape, I'll rat you out and say that you instigated me to do it. Among the 5 of them, the oldest was already in his 20s and the youngest, Jiang Pingji, was only 13 years old. Most importantly, she looked harmless. Lu Jing said, you've caused a lot of trouble for them. Today you're standing up for that farmer father and daughter, but tomorrow they'll be in big trouble. Jiang Pingji sneered. What are you afraid of? Lu Jing had an ominous premonition. As expected, as soon as that family showed signs of taking revenge, Jiang Pingji skipped class to beat them up. She tortured the family until they were bald. In the end, they couldn't afford to offend them, so they moved back to their hometown with their tails between their legs. Even the local gangsters in the neighborhood didn't dare to bully the father and daughter anymore. It's not enough to simply stand up for them. We have to ensure the quality of the after-sales service so that the victims can rest assured. Lu Jing was speechless. Fighting for justice was a small matter. She was good at making people seethe with anger at all kinds of elegant poetry gatherings. Looking at the children of the aristocratic families in Langyi County, there was almost no one who hadn't been rebuked by Jiang Pingji. If there was, it was mostly because the other party was too weak and she looked down on them. How did the news of Jiang Pingji's beauty complex spread? It turned out that Jiang Pingji had visited all the red light districts and alleys in Langyi County. She knew which place had good-looking girls, which place had nice decorations, which place had delicious food, which place had good wine. She was very familiar with them. At first, people thought that she was a playboy with an unrestrained private life. Until someone invited her to visit a brothel, they found out that she only hugged and did not stay for the night. If you don't stay for the night, then what's so interesting about staying here? Sure enough, he was still a young man who didn't know anything. Only children liked good wine and delicacies. Adults preferred to have big breasts. Jiang Pingji answered, they are good-looking, but I only look at good-looking people. The other ugly ones will dirty my eyes. A playboy with bad intentions said, the young Lang Jun from XX's family is good-looking. Why don't you go to see him? The young Lang Jun from XX's family was also famous in Langyi County for being a good-looking man with a pretty face. He was a good-looking man with a pretty face. Apart from killing people, he had been involved in all kinds of bad things. Lu Jing heard the hidden meaning in his words. He knew that the playboy wanted to instigate Jiang Pingji to cause trouble, so he wanted to stop him. Who knew that he would throw a firecracker into the latrine in the backyard that night and blow up the young Lang Jun? Turning her head, she framed the hedonistic young master who had instigated her and cleared herself of all the blame. Throwing firecrackers into the latrine in the backyard? How did you come up with such a bad idea? Lu Jing felt disgusted just thinking about the scene. He couldn't tell that the idea was thought up by the handsome young man in front of him. The night is long and I can't sleep. You can't sleep, so you blow up the latrine? I'd rather you sleep with the ladies. I didn't go alone. Who else did you find? Except for you, I found the other 3. Lu Jing was speechless. Xiaoyin, it's a pity that you didn't see it. Don't. I'm glad that I didn't see it. Otherwise, I won't be able to eat for the next month or 2. Other than blowing up latrines, he had done many heroic deeds, such as holding a grudge. She remembered that when Jiang Pingji first came to Langyi County, she was humiliated by a member of the aristocratic family. She didn't react at that time. Half a year later, the Lang Jun got married. He tied up the bride and hid her in a perforated dowry box. Then he replaced the bride with a gangster who had a fetish for longing for men. He gave them an overdose of drugs and they fooled around for a night. Lu Zheng and the others were dragged to a corner by her and eavesdropped on them for half an hour. The bride was there too. The next day, the bride angrily asked for a marriage certificate and left to marry her lover. Did he offend you? Lu Jing didn't know that the unlucky guy had offended Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji said matter-of-factly, he was the one who humiliated me half a year ago. Half a year ago? You're too vengeful. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. That's what the saints say. I've only remembered it for half a year. Jiang Pingji said sternly and righteously, moreover, I have evidence of his father's corruption and bribery. I'm prepared to destroy his entire family. I can't just watch an innocent girl marry into their family and be implicated, can I? Saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. You don't understand. Lu Xing was speechless. Which saint would be so angry that he would jump out of his coffin? Chapter 16:10. Logically speaking, Lu Xing and Jiang Pingji's friendship was not shallow. Why was Lu Xing indifferent when Jiang Pingji conquered the world? It was easy to understand. In Lu Xing's eyes, Jiang Pingji conquered the world and beat other princes everywhere. It was the same as when she blew up people's latrines in the middle of the night. As someone who knew Jiang Pingji's mischievous side, Lu Xing could not accept that his lord was invincible with words, whipping people with straw ropes, blowing up people's latrines in the middle of the night, kidnapping the bride and forcing the groom to turn gay. It was fine if one was not frivolous, but Jiang Pingji's dark history was really too much. If Lu Xing became Jiang Pingji's aide, he was not sure if she would kill him to silence him if she was unhappy, or if she would drag him to do more unreliable things. Regardless of the former or the latter, it was not what Lu Xing wanted to see. In fact, when Lu Xing heard that Wei Xi sought refuge with Jiang Pingji, he felt pity for him. This child's chrysanthemum was about to be destroyed. Why did he say that? Lu Xing and Jiang Pingji had a good relationship in the past. The two of them and 3 other friends who got along well often went out to play. One time Lu Xing found out that Jiang Pingji had not returned from hunting for a long time. He was worried and went out to look for her. He found her sitting on the cliff and overlooking the stream dozens of feet away. Lu Xing did not dare to make a sound and disturb her, for fear that she would fall off the cliff and die in fear. He didn't ask until Jiang Pingji discovered his tracks. "What are you looking at here?" The young man with a high ponytail smiled and said, "A beauty coming out of the bath." Lu Xing's eyes were fixed on her. He said in disbelief, "Who would bathe outside in the wilderness?" The young man turned her head and the ends of her hair flew in an arc in the air. She supported her chin with one hand and said, "Zixiao is a beauty." Lu Xing laughed and scolded, "You really know how to court death. With Zixiao's temperament, if you provoke him he can kill you." Everyone in Laiyi Academy knew that Wei Xi hated people talking about his appearance. The young man in front of him was not afraid of death and dared to tease Wei Xi. Besides, Wei Xi had gone out to visit a friend half a month ago and was not in Langyue County at all. Did she have clairvoyance? How could she see people bathing? The young man smiled and said, "All right, he's not bathing, but I saw him washing his feet by the stream." "Really, a beauty washing her feet looks good too." Lu Xing said, "Stubborn." He did not take the matter to heart. After all, everyone knew that Jiang Pingji was a shameless person who only cared about appearances. After a period of time, Lu Xing left to study abroad. Before he left, Jiang Pingji invited him to Langyue County's Wangshan Pavilion for a drink. The two of them had drunk quite a lot of wine and the ground was covered with wine jars. At this moment, Alvi vaguely heard Wei Xi's slightly embarrassed and annoyed voice coming from behind the dense thicket. Listening carefully, it turned out that a certain scholar was pestering Wei Xi. His behavior was frivolous and his words were impetuous. One could tell at a glance that he was a bad person. Jiang Pingji lifted the wine jar and gave him a good beating. Wei Xi glanced at Lu Xing, who followed closely behind, and left Wangshan Pavilion without saying anything. Why did he leave? I'm still waiting for him to devote himself to me. Isn't this the plot of a hero saving a damsel in distress? Alvi scolded jokingly, "Come on, Zixiao doesn't have any sexual fetishes. Don't covet him." Jiang Pingji said, "Believe it or not, Wei Zixiao is interested in me." Alvi said, "It's faster in your dreams." Jiang Pingji said, "He looks down on my charm. How about we bet on this?" "Bet on what?" Jiang Pingji said, "If Zixiao becomes mine in the future under the premise that it doesn't violate the morality of a gentleman, you have to agree to one of my requests." Alvi hesitated and asked, "This request isn't to be in cahoots with you. You kill people and I'll hand over the knife, right?" Jiang Pingji said, "As a member of the F5 Heavenly Group of Langyue Academy, why are your thoughts so dishonest?" At first, Alvi did not know what the Love 5 Heavenly Group was. He was confused when he heard it. Jiang Pingji said that it was a group with similar interests, so he understood and tacitly agreed to be a cult. "Don't worry, don't think so badly. Maybe one day I'll become a minister and be conferred the title of king or marquis. I'll let you work for me. With me as the leader of the F5 Heavenly Group, I'll definitely share some soup with you. I'll guarantee you a lifetime of glory, splendor, and wealth. Thinking about it, don't you think I'm very loyal? Jing wanted to beat the brat to death. You eat the meat and I drink the soup? Lu Lanting, you brat, who gave you the courage to say that? To hell with similar interests. What love 5 heavenly group? Just cut ties with them. All signs showed that Jiang Pingji had been coveting Wei Ci for a long time. However, a gentleman did not comment on other people's quarrels. Jing could not keep Wei Ci away from Jiang Pingji without evidence. Taking a step back, Wei Ci was a student in his 20s and had long since left Langya Academy. He did not have much interaction with Jiang Pingji. He never expected that after many years Jiang Pingji the brat would no longer harm Langya County. Instead she would harm the world. Wei Zixiao did not choose the feudal vassals but chose the brat who coveted his chrysanthemum. This was probably fate. When Jing heard that Jiang Pingji was causing trouble, he did not go to his old classmate. Instead he slipped away with his boy servant. He was afraid of Jiang Pingji. He was afraid that one day he would receive news of her forcing Wei Ci, but he was also afraid that she would use her promise to make him drink soup. Later, when Jiang Pingji announced her identity as a woman to the world, Jing avoided her even more. He could not imagine that the brat who was invincible with words, who could whip people with straw ropes, who blew up latrines in the middle of the night, who kidnapped the bride and forced the groom to be gay, was actually a woman. The scholars in Langya County would avoid her when they saw her. I'm afraid they'll be worried to death. Jing pitied the people in Jiang Pingji's camp. As the saying went, it was easier to change a leopard than a leopard. With such an unreliable lord, he was afraid that he would go bald from worry. When Jing found out that Hua Yuan had imagined a Lu Shi personality, he panicked. No one could stop that woman from courting death. After carefully observing for a while, he realized that compared to the original, Hua Yuan was quite normal. Rather than saying that Hua Yuan had imagined a Lu Shi, it would be more accurate to say that he had imagined a Lu Shi that he thought he was. Was it because Hua Yuan's essence was not high enough? Or was it because the original's personality was too difficult to replicate? Different people saw different things. Preparing for war was too boring, and Jing was gradually made a figurehead by Hua Yuan. To him time passed slowly. With nothing to do, Jing calmed down and picked up the calligraphy that had been neglected for many years. Occasionally he listened to his boy servant talk about gossip to kill time. There were many types of gossip. Among them, gossip about love affairs was the easiest to spread. For example, when his lord and Cui was having a banquet, someone said, "I heard that the princess's dancing skills are outstanding." He ordered the princess of Xichang to dance in a thin shirt to liven things up. For example, Hua Yuan liked the prince's boy toy. All kinds of gossip made Jing frown. "Master, there is a guest outside the residence. He claims to be your old friend." "Old friend? Who?" The boy servant said. "That person's surname is Fong." "Fong? Old friend?" After thinking about it, there was only one old friend with the surname Fong. Chapter 1611. This old friend was not an outsider. Lu Jing was acquainted with him. His surname was Fong and his given name was Xi. His courtesy name was Buku. He was from Zhangzhou's Dongmen County. When he was young, he went to Laiyi County to study for several years. "What kind of wind blew today to bring you here?" Lu Jing tidied up a little and went to meet the guest. As soon as he entered, he saw a familiar face. Fong Ji smiled and tidied his clothes. He got up and bowed to Lu Jing. The two of them were worlds apart. Fong Ji was a teacher who lived in seclusion in the countryside, while Lu Jing was a counselor working for a feudal lord. He came with a mission, so he did not dare to provoke Lu Jing. "We've been classmates for several years. Do you have to be interrogated when you come to visit?" "It's been years. Shaoyin is better than before." Although Fong Ji had a square face and looked righteous and awe-inspiring, Lu Jing knew that under his decent appearance, there was a wicked heart. They had not contacted each other in recent years. One would not visit for no reason. Since Fong Ji came to visit at this time, Lu Jing had to be careful. Most importantly, Fong Ji's ancestral home was Zhangzhou's Dongmen County. Zhangzhou was now in Jiang Pingji's hands. Therefore, Fong Ji's purpose of visit was thought-provoking. Despite his suspicions, Lu Jing did not expose him. Instead, he followed Fong Ji's topic and began to reminisce about their youth. For both Fong Ji and Lu Jing, the time when they were teenagers studying was always particularly beautiful. Even if Jiang Pingji was added to this beautiful time, it was still a memory of their youth. The two of them talked about their respective situations and sighed endlessly. Not everyone who went to Lanyi Academy to study was talented. For example, Fang Zhi's talent was very mediocre. After he finished studying, he returned to his hometown to be a teacher and earn some money to support his students. In recent years, the outside world was in chaos. Fang Zhi's small private school was also affected. It was difficult for the people to make ends meet. How could they afford to send their children to a private school to study and learn? Therefore Fang Zhi lost his job. Although he lost his job, Fang Zhi was not very pessimistic. Compared to the homeless refugees and people in troubled times who had lost their families, he at least had a small house to shelter him from the rain and he could eat his fill. In the worst-case scenario, he still had other ways out, such as relying on his classmates. Most of the students who graduated from Lanyi Academy had a good life. Some of them had joined the feudal vassals and were doing very well, while some of them were small officials in small places. If Fang Zhi chose to rely on his schoolmates, he would be able to live a decent life, even if he did not have a small fortune. The aristocratic families formed a huge network of power through their bloodlines, and the students who came from the same academy relied on their friendship. The latter was not as obvious as the former, but it was still an invisible force that could not be underestimated. Therefore Fang Zhi was very calm. However, he quickly lost his composure. He lived in seclusion in a small rural town. His house was built with the help of nearby villagers. The quality of the house was quite good, but no matter how good the quality was, it could not withstand the ravages of mudslides. Fortunately, when the mountain collapsed and formed a landslide, Fang Zhi brought his wife and son out to purchase daily necessities. Apart from the chickens and ducks in the kitchen, there were no other casualties in the family. He was lucky, but the villagers nearby were not so lucky. The mud road leading to the outside world was washed away by the landslide, and the village was almost isolated from the outside world. The mountains were barren and the weather was getting colder. The rice stored in the homes of the people was not enough for them to survive the winter, so they had to find someone to clear the road again. For this matter, Fang Zhi could only think of a way to find someone in the outside world, but he encountered a recruitment drive. Of course, Fang Zhi was not recruited to be a soldier, but he heard that the master of Zhangzhou had been replaced by his former classmate. Fang Zhi was speechless. When did this happen? Wasn't Yang Tao in power a few months ago? News in the countryside was blocked, and Fang Zhi did not have the ability to intervene in the world's general situation. Naturally, he did not care much and the news was not timely enough. However, it was definitely beneficial for his former classmate to be in power, so Fang Zhi shamelessly begged to meet him and borrow someone to clear the mountain road again. Jiang Pingji heard that he was a member of the F5 Heavenly Group, so of course she agreed. However, Fang Zhi and Jiang Pingji were not as happy as others expected when they reunited with their former classmate. It could not be helped, it was awkward. Lu Jing only heard that Jiang Pingji blew up the latrine the next day, but he was an accomplice who went out with Jiang Pingji to blow up the latrine. The classmate who blew up the latrine back then had suddenly become the ruler of the world. How could he face it with a smile so that he would not appear awkward? It was quite urgent. Fang Zhi was embarrassed, but Jiang Pingji was so calm that no one could tell her emotions. While they were chatting, she asked Fang Zhi how he had been in recent years. Hearing that the private school that Fang Zhi opened had no students enrolled and was closed, she asked, "Are you willing to go to Wanzhou?" Fang Zhi did not understand. "You are now teaching at the Jinlin Academy in Wanzhou. You have a solid foundation, why don't you apply for a position as a teacher?" Jiang Pingji said, "You are idle here, but it is a waste of time. Ordinary farmers can't even keep themselves warm and fed. How can they have spare money to educate their children?" The Jinlin Academy was one of the projects that Jiang Pingji valued the most. She had been investing in its expansion all these years, and there had always been a shortage of teachers with a solid foundation and a good character. Fang Zhi was indeed very mischievous when he was young, but his character was not bad. He was as upright as his name suggested. If Fang Zhi went to teach at the Jinlin Academy, Jiang Pingji could protect him and help Master Yuanjing share some of the pressure. Fang Zhi was silent for a while before he said, "What Master Lanting said is true, but..." Jiang Pingji knew what he was hesitating about. The atmosphere at the Lanyi Academy was good in the past, and Master Yuanjing treated everyone equally. Very few students felt that they were neglected or that they were born inferior. If not for that, Lu Zheng and a few students from humble backgrounds would not have been able to mingle so well with Jiang Pingji. However, there was a time limit to studying. Once they left the Langyi Academy, the benefits brought by the students' original families would be exposed. It was not that Fang Ji did not try to become an official. Firstly, he was not cut out for it, and it would be difficult for him to achieve anything as an official. Secondly, he did not have the means to become an official, so he could only go to the countryside to teach, in an attempt to let more ambitious farmers become literate and change their lives of poverty. Fang Ji was not famous, and the private school that he opened was also unknown. The rich families did not fancy it, and the ordinary people could not afford it. In the end, Fang Ji could only pay for it, and he barely had a few students. There was a fierce war outside, and the few students were called back by their parents to farm and support their families. There's still some time before Zhangzhou becomes stable. It's fine for you to stay here, but will your wife and children be able to take it? Fang Ji was not a pretentious person. Although he was a little chunibu when he was young, he became more mature when he was middle-aged. It's a luxury to find a place to settle down in these troubled times. Fortunately, Master Lanting did not abandon me, and I have the intention to go north. When classmates met, there was always a lot to talk about, especially about the people and things that happened during their school days. As they talked, Jiang Pingji suddenly remembered that Lu Jing still owed her a debt. Unknowingly, Fang Ji accepted the task of collecting the debt on her behalf. When she asked for the reason, Fang Ji replied, "Most people like perfection. Things remain the same, but people change." It's easy to say but heart-wrenching to hear. Chapter 16:12. For this simple reason, Fang Ji appeared in front of Lu Zheng. Zichuan once said, "Time flies. Day and night." Fang Ji took the initiative to lead the topic to his destination. He sighed and said, "It's a luxury to meet my classmates in the past. I met Lu Shi, the Duke of Lanting, a while ago. He's changed a lot." Lu Jing snorted softly. How could she not change a lot? She was the only person in the entire Langyi Academy who had changed beyond recognition. Not only had she changed from a hedonistic aristocrat to a feudal lord, but she'd even changed her gender. Fang Ji saw that Lu Jing had no intention of talking, so he brought up the interesting events of his youth. However, he was the only one smiling awkwardly. Lu Jing didn't even bat an eyelid. After a moment, Fang Ji said, "Xiaoyin plans to follow Cui to the end of her life?" Lu Jing retorted, "How are you so sure that my lord is no match for Lu Shi?" Fang Ji said, "Lu Shi and Cui. Whether Cui wins or loses, Xiaoyin, ask yourself, will you have a good ending? Even though you've lived in the countryside for a long time and rarely heard about the affairs of the feudal lords, you heard a few things on the way here. Justin Duishi's behavior is beneath Xiaoyin's notice, to say nothing of anything else. With your temperament, why would you wholeheartedly help a ruthless and merciless tyrant? It's true that the four factions of Nanman have a deep grudge against Cui, but Cui's behavior isn't just for revenge. It's more like he's venting his cruelty. You have many conflicts with him. Now there's Hua Yuan, whom Cui favors. Your situation." Lu Jing raised a hand to signal for Fang Ji to shut up. He really didn't want to hear this. "You're here to persuade Lu Shi?" Fang Ji laughed bitterly. "This lowly one is mediocre and clumsy. How am I qualified to be Lu Shi's persuader?" Lu Jing sneered. "Clumsy? I didn't hear it, but you make sense. Why doesn't Xiaoyin consider it carefully?" Fang Ji said. "You're looking at Cui coldly. He's not a good lord." What conflict was the most difficult to reconcile between a subject and a lord? Of course, it was political stances and opinions. Lu Jing was not a person without a mind of his own, and he was quite stubborn. Unless one side backed down, he and Cui would have an irreconcilable conflict because of their political views, and LV Zheng's fate would not be good. Fang Ji didn't want to see Lu Jing die in Jiang Pingji's hands, but he also didn't want to see Lu Jing killed by someone who wasn't a wise ruler. Lu Jing shook his head. This matter couldn't be resolved with careful consideration. It was true that he didn't like Cui, but he wouldn't join the other side just because of this reason. Lu Zheng's humble background had already been criticized by others. If he were to make such a capricious move, it was unknown how others would judge him. Most likely they would use their bloodline as an excuse. For example, they would say that the son of a lowly person did not have the demeanor of a scholar, and that he was a slave to Langyi Academy. Fang Ji sighed. "I knew that you would reject me, but I didn't hold any hope. I only hoped that you would consider it carefully and not regret it. This was the advantage of knowing one's background. After Lu Jing rejected him once, Fang Ji would not insist on persuading him because it was unnecessary. Lu Zheng's confidence was firm. He would not change his stance just because of a few words. If he forced Lu Jing to accept Fang Ji's recommendation, it would be counterproductive. Lu Jing accepted his kindness and nodded in agreement. I will consider it carefully. Little did he know that Fang Ji had not given up. Instead he chose to use a roundabout way to save the country. To be honest, Xiaoyin, an old friend asked me to collect an old debt from you. Lu Jing was stunned. He didn't know when he owed someone a debt and even provoked Fang Ji to personally come to his door to collect it. What debt? Fang Ji said, Xiaoyin, do you remember that you owe someone a promise? A gentleman keeps his word. You're also a person who keeps his word. You won't go back on your word. Lu Jing thought for a while and knew who the debt collector was. He never made promises easily. Of course, what he owed Jiang Pingji was not a promise but a gambling debt. After thinking about it, Fang Ji was probably here to collect the debt on behalf of Jiang Pingji. Naturally, I won't go back on my word. Lu Jing asked, what did the creditor ask you to tell me? Fang Ji said, she asked you to accept your loss. Ha women. Lu Jing sneered in his heart. Who asked her what she said at the time? She had said that her request would not be for the two of them to collude. She would kill someone and he would hand over a knife. If Lu Jing really joined her side and helped her conquer the world, what was the difference between that and handing over a knife to someone? It would be helping a tyrant do evil. Not to mention, Lu Jing was about to say something but his expression suddenly froze. His eyes widened to the size of copper bells and he suddenly shouted. Not good. Not good. Fang Ji was scared out of his wits. He hurriedly asked, what's not good? Lu Jing looked like he wanted to say something but hesitated. His bet with Jiang Pingji all those years ago had a premise. If Xixiao becomes mine in the future, you have to agree to one of my requests as long as it doesn't go against the principles of a gentleman. According to the context, become mine definitely did not mean that he was on Jiang Pingji's side. The two of them had to have an indescribable relationship for the bet to be fulfilled. In other words, the flower of Langyi Academy had already been bitten by a dog? Lu Lanting. I knew that a dog can't change its habits. Lu Zheng's face turned ashen and he forcefully swallowed the last word. Xixiao was not sh*t, but Jiang Pingji was indeed a dog. As a lord of a region, she slept with her subordinate. How shameless could she be? Shameless. Even a rabbit would not eat the grass near its nest. Xixiao had worked for her for so many years. But in exchange he had been slept with by his lord? Fang Ji was confused. He did not understand but he thought it was awesome. He had stayed at Lu Zheng's place for 2 days. He did not know who had leaked the news but Hua Yuan had come personally. Fang Ji frowned. Hua Yuan is not on good terms with you. He came to visit. Could it be? Lu Jing said, don't overthink it. This person is very easy to deal with. If it was someone else, Fang Ji would probably be detained. But if it was a lunatic like Hua Yuan, things might not be so certain. Although Lu Shi was a dog, he was still a righteous person. He would not lay his hands on a classmate without a solid reason, let alone a classmate who had a good relationship with him. Hua Yuan, the impostor, had come to visit. Rather than saying that he was testing Lu Jing, it would be more accurate to say that he was here to see his classmate. What brings you here? Lu Zheng's hands were hidden in his sleeves. He looked at Hua Yuan with an unfriendly gaze. Hua Yuan laughed. I heard that Xiaoyin's residence has an important guest? Lu Jing said, how interesting. Why don't you go and pamper that hot beauty of yours? Why do you care if I have an important guest? Hua Yuan said, Buku and I are classmates. I heard that he came to your residence so I came to take a look. Why are you so angry? Chapter 16:13. In Hua Yuan's eyes, Lu Zheng's actions were a blatant lie. He could not be deceived at all. However, just as Lu Zheng had guessed, Hua Yuan was there to see his old classmate. He had no ill intentions. Since Lu Zheng had stopped him, he would not make a fool of himself. He shamelessly stayed at Lu Zheng's residence for a few cups of tea. When he did not see his old classmate Fang Ji, he stood up and prepared to leave. At that moment, Lu Zheng suddenly asked a question. Do you know what Fang Ji looks like now? The so-called Lu Shi was a character that Hua Yuan had imagined after his illness flared up. This character was based on Jiang Pingji's intelligence. No matter how detailed the words were, they were just words in black and white. Many things only had a general idea. For example, Hua Yuan remembered that Lu Shi and Fang Ji were schoolmates and had a good relationship. However, he did not know what Fang Ji looked like. No matter how similar the imaginary character was, it was ultimately fake and could not have the real person's memory. Hua Yuan could not possibly know Fang Ji's real appearance. Of course, he did not realize that the servant who had just served him tea was actually Fang Ji. When Lu Jing asked this question, Hua Yuan subconsciously tried to recall Fang Ji's appearance, but it was all blank. He only had a vague idea. Who was Fang Ji? He was from Zhangzhou's Dongmen County. He had studied in Langyi when he was young. He and himself were schoolmates and had a good relationship. There was no other content except for a brief introduction. Hua Yuan's calm expression immediately turned cold. He looked at Lu Jing with a murderous look. Of course, he knew what Lu Jing wanted to say. Lu Jing wanted to deny his existence and disturb his emotions. He would not let him have his way. I haven't seen my schoolmate for almost 10 years. It's been a long time, so I can't remember clearly. Lu Jing knew when to stop. He cupped his hands and bid farewell to Hua Yuan. The latter snorted coldly and waved his sleeves before leaving. After the garden left, Fang Ji changed into his own clothes and walked out from the back hall. He looked in the direction Hua Yuan had left with surprise. Xiaoyin, this is... Lu Jing revealed some insider information. The person who just left is the Lord's most trusted subordinate. Fang Ji said, that person just now was Hua Yuan? He looks talented and has an outstanding temperament. No wonder Cui appreciated him. It sounded like a compliment, but it was actually a derogatory remark. It sounded like a compliment, but in reality, it was a sarcastic jab at Hua Yuan for relying on his looks to climb to the top. Lu Jing sneered and said, there's something wrong with Hua Yuan's brain. He always thinks that he studied in Langyi County. I don't know where I heard that you were coming, so I came over to take a look. I asked you to appear, but he didn't recognize you at all. He must be crazy. Fang Ji didn't know what was going on, but he learned from Lu Jing that Hua Yuan had gone mad. How could that be? Just now I saw that his facial features were clear and upright. How is he insane? After all, Fang Ji had pledged his allegiance to Jiang Pingji. Lu Jing could not reveal the exact situation of his own camp. Under the premise of satisfying his desire to confide in others, he could disrupt Fang Ji's judgment. Even if Fang Ji went back to report to Jiang Pingji, Lu Jing wouldn't be worried. He doesn't look crazy, but his words are incoherent. Lu Jing mocked, misleading Fang Ji's judgment. As expected, Fang Ji misunderstood that Hua Yuan was pretending to be crazy. He couldn't help but worry about Lu Zheng's situation under Cui. Hua Yuan is deeply trusted and relied on by Cui. He can be considered to be in a high position now. Why can't he tolerate even you and make things difficult for you? Fang Ji was very worried about Lu Zheng's situation. It was fine if his lord didn't trust him, but there was also a colleague who was eyeing him covetously. How could he live like this? He really didn't know why Lu Jing was so insistent on going down this path until he died. Why don't you reconsider what happened earlier? Looking at it coldly, and Duoshi isn't a wise leader and Hua Yuan can't figure it out either. How can he still be in the mood for internal strife in front of a great enemy? Although it was inevitable that there would be internal conflicts within the group, as long as one could distinguish between priorities, it wouldn't affect the overall situation. If one ignored official matters for personal grudges, such a force would be dissolved and annexed by the enemy sooner or later. Lu Jing pursed his lips and chuckled. Everyone is selfish. Some people forget their personal interests for the sake of the public, but there are also people who neglect the public for the sake of personal interests. Without a doubt, Hua Yuan was the latter. Fang Ji said rather worriedly, what if he uses our relationship as a ruse to slander you? What will you do? If Hua Yuan revealed Fang Ji's existence to Cui, not only would Fang Ji be in danger, but Lu Jing would also face the risk of being deeply suspected. Lu Jing smiled. Just take care of yourself. My lord still needs manpower for the time being, so she won't do anything. Just as Fang Ji said, in front of a great enemy, Cui wouldn't do anything to Lu Jing even if his brain had been kicked by a donkey. It wasn't that Cui cherished old friendships, but that he still needed Lu Zheng's assistance in many administrative matters. Lu Zheng had helped Cui develop the group from nothing to today's scale. He had put in a lot of effort and energy. How could a mistress like Hua Yuan, who had stepped in halfway, completely replace him? And Cui wanted to kick Lu Xing out, but he had to first find a suitable successor. Fang Ji saw that Lu Xing was confident, so he wasn't worried anymore. He and Lu Xing were classmates after all. How could he bear to see him die a horrible death? Although he had nothing to do at home, Lu Xing wasn't under house arrest. He could still secretly send Fang Ji away safely. A few days later, Fang Ji returned to Jiangpingji along the waterway to report everything. She was silent for a long time after listening. Fang Ji couldn't help but put in a good word for Lu Xing. Xiaoyin's temperament. Without waiting for Fang Ji to finish, Jiangpingji said, "In any case, we were classmates. As long as he wants to live, I won't kill him. I didn't even do anything to Qingjing, let alone Lu Xing. For the sake of the Buddha, Master Yuanjing is old. He only has 4 direct disciples. If I can protect them, I will protect them all. Of course, if Lu Xing takes things too hard and insists on stepping on my bottom line, I can't keep him." Fang Ji stopped talking. He knew that this was the biggest concession and promise Jiangpingji could give as a feudal lord. "If that's the case, I'll be so bold as to thank you on behalf of Xiaoyin." Jiangpingji smiled. "Buka has a lot of confidence in me." Fang Ji said, "I'm not trying to flatter you, and I don't know much about the situation. On the surface, Cui has indeed lost." He didn't believe that Cui couldn't see that the old faction led by Lu Xing and the forces led by Hua Yuan were at odds. As the lord, she didn't think about balancing and mediating, but allowed them to fight. Even if they succeeded, there would be many twists and turns, and they wouldn't be able to protect their foundation in the future. On the contrary, Fang Ji felt that his old classmate was more reliable. The only shortcoming he had was probably the fact that he had children. Fang Ji made this trip on behalf of Jiangpingji. Of course, it wasn't just to collect debts from Lu Xing. He had another mission. According to Fang Ji's description, a war between the two families would probably break out soon. Chapter 16:14. Langjun. This is the boundary of Langya County. Look outside. Spring flowers are blooming. Although it was a chilly season, the terrain of Langya County was different from the outside world. Spring came earlier than usual. Taxi changed out of her heavy cotton-padded jacket and into a bright light yellow dress. The hem of this dress was extremely long. When Taxi walked and spun her body half around, the folds of the dress would spread out. She easily spun in a big circle and left an arc in the air. Jiangpingji looked at her blushing cheeks and said with a smile, "Spring is here. You're more delicate. I don't know what honey you ate. Why is it so sweet?" Taxi blushed. Jiangpingji blinked and said, "Don't you know best what honey I ate? I should ask you what kind of magic potion you've been feeding me all day. I look left and right. Why is our Taxi so beautiful? The spring scenery outside is not as beautiful as your eyebrows." The two of them sat in the carriage and chatted. The curtain was rolled up. Clear sunlight poured in and dyed the carriage golden. They did not deliberately lower their voices. Naturally, their voices were heard by the carriage closest to them. Master Yuanjing was playing chess in the carriage. Occasionally, he was distracted and heard Jiangpingji's words. He smiled and shook his head. "Frivolous." Tang Yao frowned and muttered, "You're so young, but you have so many flowery words." Lu Xi's young Langjun was still a few days away from his 13th birthday, but he had a lot of flowery words to tease the maidservants. He was so frivolous and did not know how many girls he would harm in 2 years. Who knew how he would get mixed up in the inner circle? Master Yuanjing said helplessly, "Being able to speak well is also a skill. If Lu Xi's young Langjun can win the hearts of girls, he won't have to worry about marriage in the future." At that moment, Wei Ci had a question to ask his teacher. When he heard what Master Yuanjing said, his expression became strange. "Teacher, are you serious?" Some people did not like Jiangpingji, but of course there were people who liked her. For example, Lu Xing, who was shameless and squeezed into the same carriage as Wei Ci. "This new classmate is quite interesting. He's not like the others who always act like gentlemen. He's very lively." LV Jing commented on Jiangpingji. Qingjing, who was playing chess with LV Jing in his spare time, lowered his eyes and said nothing. Han Yu, who was watching the game, said, "Xiaoyin, are you saying this because your senior and junior brothers are old-fashioned and boring? I've met Lu Lanting before. He's not as likable as he seems." Qingjing didn't say anything, but he changed his previous steady and sure approach and killed Lu Jing to express his dissatisfaction. Lu Jing saw that he had lost the upper hand on the chessboard, so he simply lay on the ground and let Qing Jing beat him. He struggled passively. Although Han Yu and the others didn't have a high opinion of Jiang Pingji, Lv Jing still believed that seeing was believing. A person's heart could only be revealed after a long time. Besides, he was only 13 years old. It was the time for him to get out of his stupidity. It would be too difficult for Jiang Pingji to be mature and steady like a weak scholar. Of course, this was not enough to win Lv Jing's favor. What Lv Jing liked the most was Jiang Pingji's equal attitude towards others. Because of his family background, Lv Jing didn't have many friends in the academy. There were only a few whom he could confide in. When he heard that the flower festival was Jiang Pingji's birthday, Lv Jing specially gave her a gift. The gift wasn't expensive, but it was thoughtful. In return, Jiang Pingji invited him to drink with prostitutes. Drinking with prostitutes is not bad. Prostitutes' wine? Prostitutes' wine? When Lv Jing came back to his senses, he was already in a brothel filled with the fragrance of rouge and cosmetics. "Why are you here?" Jiang Pingji said matter-of-factly. "Didn't I promise to invite you to Chongqing Lane for a drink at Jishan Hot Spring? But the crown prince of the Count of Zhenbei died so suddenly that I forgot about it. As the saying goes, a gentleman never goes back on his word. I can't easily break my promise." Chongqing Lane was a famous red-light district near Jishan Hot Spring in Shangjing. It was a gentle place for men and a gathering of all kinds of beauties. Lv Jing blushed and almost knelt before Jiang Pingji. "Jishan Hot Spring is Jishan Hot Spring. This is Langyue County. What's the difference?" Lv Jing wanted to cry but had no tears. "If the teacher finds out that we're looking for prostitutes, we'll be finished." His teacher never used a ruler to punish his students. He liked to punish them by making them copy books in all kinds of postures and positions. If he said this, it would probably cause misunderstandings. For example, a while ago someone broke the rules of the academy and was punished by the teacher to copy books. He had to squat down with bamboo slips weighing more than 10 kilograms on his head. Another time he was punished to copy in the middle of the night when he was sleepy. He said that he wanted his words to absorb the essence of the sun and the moon. He really didn't know how these crafty and inexhaustible methods came up with them. Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes and said, "Who told you it's looking for prostitutes?" "I said it's drinking. Do you want to stay in the arms of a prostitute?" Lv Jing was speechless. Jiang Pingji said, "I'll only be 13 years old after today. Are you willing to bury a virgin like me in a red light district?" Lv Jing said, "Really just drinking?" Jiang Pingji said, "Of course. You don't want something else to happen, do you?" Lv Jing felt as if his secret had been exposed. He blushed a little. "Did I say that I want something to happen? A gentleman is upright. Why would he think of such filthy content?" Jiang Pingji curled her lips and said, "Forget it. Which gentleman doesn't leave a descendant? Unless old Wang lives next door." "What do you mean?" Jiang Pingji said, "In ancient times, there was an evil demon who liked to hook up with married women. He often settled next door to his target woman in order to be in a favorable position. He took advantage of the absence of the male owner to have private contact with the woman and secretly conceived a child. According to what you said, a gentleman should be ruthless and abandon his desires. He shouldn't think about relationships between men and women. If he didn't do such things, how would his descendants come about? Most likely old Wang next door worked hard for him." Lv Jing was dumbfounded. He reprimanded her with a red face. "What kind of books are you reading at such a young age? You should read more about the sage's words." "No, I like beautiful young ladies." Lv Jing's alcohol tolerance was not very good, but Jiang Pingji was not drunk. In the end, she carried the drunk Lv Jing on her shoulder and left. "What are you doing in the middle of the night?" Carrying him over the wall, Jiang Pingji found 3 sneaky shadows nesting in a remote corner. Their heads were close together and they were looking at something with a candle. Jiang Pingji called out, "Hey, what are you 3 doing?" The 3 students who were caught panicked. Jiang Pingji threw Lv Jing aside and he lay on his back. She quickly snatched the thing that the 3 of them were trying to hide. He took a look. It was a super luxurious version of the fire avoidance drawing made of bamboo paper. There were movements, expressions, and a plot. One had to know that bamboo paper was extremely expensive at that time. Ordinary books were not even enough for it, let alone drawing a fire avoidance drawing. You're a new student, right? Without waiting for Jiang Pingji's response, one of the tall students stepped forward and put his hand on her shoulder, acting like they were very close. Yes, I just arrived a few days ago. Why are you planning to bribe me? How can this be considered a bribe? This is called sharing blessings and suffering together. I'll lend it to you to broaden your horizons. Don't betray us. Instead of looking at the fire avoidance drawing, it's better to look at the real person. You're still young, you don't understand the fun inside. Although the real person is good, there are flaws in the body. How can it compare to the perfection in the drawing? Jiang Pingji nodded seriously. Chapter 16:15. Hey, how can this be called twisted logic? This is called truth. Jiang Pingji laughed. I've never heard of such logic. As she spoke, she glanced at the friendly classmate. He was wearing brocade clothes, and she could tell that he was the foolish son of a rich family. He was the classic example of a foolish person with a lot of money. If not, who would be willing to spend a lot of money to draw fire-avoiding pictures on bamboo paper? Wasn't that just burning one's hands with too much money? If one had the money to buy paper figures, they might as well look for the real person. Which pretty girl in the red light district couldn't get one? The paper figures were fake, but the real person could still see, touch, and smell them. In the words of the audience, the person in front of her was probably an otaku who was addicted to 2D figurines. He would rather spend a lot of money on the paper figures than spend it on the real person. Jiang Pingji had a good eye. The person in front of her was just that. The friendly classmate said, "Haven't you heard of it now? You're still young. You'll know when you're older." Jiang Pingji was speechless. She might look like a 13-year-old, but she was in her 40s. Wasn't it ridiculous for a little kid to say that to her? Jiang Pingji sized up the other two with her peripheral vision. Unlike the silly duosu beside her who was wearing brocade clothes, the other two were obviously ordinary or even poor students. This could be seen from their clothes, the way they dressed, the skin on their hands, the thick calluses on their palms, and the incense they used. She was surprised. Since she transmigrated to this world, she had seen a clear division between the rich and the common people. It was rare to see people of two classes get along well. The one with the best background was the silly duosu beside her. His surname was Jiang, his given name was Mo, and his courtesy name was Benji. The slightly inferior one was Mashio, and his courtesy name was Jiqing. The most ordinary one was Fangji, and his courtesy name was Buku. After a deeper understanding, Jiang Pingji finally understood why the three of them could get along so well. Jiang Mo liked to collect all kinds of pictures of beauties and fire-avoiding pictures. He was willing to spend a lot of money for the pictures he liked. It was said that in order to correct his addiction to 2D, his parents did not hesitate to put 5 or 6 beauties in his room. They had slender waists, big breasts, and perky buttocks. However, Jiang Mo refused to look at them. He was obsessed with the paper figures every day as if he was possessed. Mashio's family had dozens of acres of fertile land, so he didn't have to worry about food and drink. Occasionally he could even help Fangji, who lived in the same room as him. Fangji's family background was the worst, but he was good at painting. He was almost as good as Wei Ci, who was the best painter in the academy. Both of them had their own style. Fangji could accurately capture the characteristics of a person, and could draw them vividly with just a few strokes. In order to earn some extra money, he would occasionally accept some orders, such as the fire avoidance diagram. A few days ago, Jiang Mo spent a lot of money to buy the best bamboo paper and gave it to Fangji to draw the fire-repelling painting. Fangji had spent a lot of effort on this order, and it had just been completed not long ago. When Jiang Mo heard the news, he immediately woke up from his sleep and rushed over to inspect the goods. The academy didn't allow anything like the fire-repelling painting, not to mention that Fangji's drawing was very sexy. The three of them were sneakily handing over the stolen goods in a secluded area. Who knew that they would bump into Jiang Pingji, who was carrying the drunken Lu Jing back? Look, you've seen it now. You can't just casually talk about this. Although Jiang Mo was born into a wealthy family, he was not very courageous. To put it bluntly, he was a bit of a coward. Jiang Pingji said, "So what if I did?" Fangji's face paled. Jiang Mo said, "If you say it, the three of us can testify against each other and drag you down with us. Just look at you and LV Xiaoyin's makeup and the smell of alcohol on you. It's obvious that you just came back from the red light district. If we can't escape, then don't even think about escaping." Because each of them had something on the other, they hid it from each other and actually used it to shorten the distance between them. Lu Zheng was completely muddle-headed and entered the camp of the bandits. But Jiang Pingji found Jiang Imo and the other two to be quite fun. Teenagers of this age all liked to brag. Jiang Imo, for example, claimed that he had been through hundreds of battles even though he hadn't even given his virginity to anyone. When they started to talk dirty, each of them blushed at Jiang Pingji's words. They had no actual combat experience and no theory, yet they still learned to brag? Old CG taught them what it meant to be a high level. I know a drawing method that not only looks good but it can also make people move. Jiang Imo asked curiously, the drawing can move. Fangji was also curious. Jiang Pingji explained the most basic drawing method, and the three of them smiled meaningfully. Lu Zheng, who had been dragged down with him, folded his arms coldly. Ma Xiao and the others loved to study, but Jiang Pingji and Jiang Imo preferred to skip class. When they heard that there was a girl with outstanding beauty, the two of them would always go over to take a look. You don't like real people, why are you so enthusiastic? Jiang Imo said, people have flaws but they also have strengths. If everyone's different strengths were combined, wouldn't they be perfect? Jiang Pingji was speechless. To put it bluntly, it was for the sake of her paper dolls. If she collected too many materials, there would always be unexpected incidents such as the little tyrant kidnapping a girl. Lu Zheng wanted to keep the peace, but Jiang Pingji couldn't bear to see the little tyrant be so arrogant, and she couldn't bear to see the beautiful girl fall into the evil hands. What do you plan to do? That family is nothing, but this is Langyue County, not Hejin County. The magistrate of Liuzhou is far away in Chongzhou. How can he protect you? Lu Zheng and Jiang Pingji had known each other for a long time. He knew that she had a bad temper and it was a headache. Jiang Pingji said, a man dressed up as a woman. Tonight all of you wait for a good show. She changed into women's clothes and entered the little tyrant's manor. She tied the whole family to the beam of the house and whipped them. The four of them were stunned by her actions. Lu Zheng took out a handful of melon seeds from his sleeve. The four of them lined up and leaned against the low wall to watch Jiang Pingji's passionate performance. The corner of Ma Xiao's mouth twitched. You actually brought this, Lu Zheng snorted. Teacher gave it to me yesterday. It was newly cooked by the master's wife. If you don't like it, don't eat it. Want to save some? How could the three of them dislike it? They each grabbed a handful and started munching on the melon seeds. Right, you guys? My hand hurts from whipping, but you guys are enjoying the show. Jiang Imo laughed. You can't say that. You used your hands, but we used our mouths. Everyone worked hard. Lu Zheng said, I couldn't tell, but you look pretty in women's clothes. Without waiting for Jiang Pingji to refute, Jiang Imo said, is Lanting's appearance considered pretty? If I were to dress up as a woman, I would definitely be prettier than him. Lanting doesn't look like one at all. He should at least find a few steamed buns to pat his chest. Look at his pea-shaped body. I wonder how the little tyrant's eyes worked. He didn't notice anything unusual. The young lady he had his eyes on has all the qualities she should have. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Ma Xiao laughed. If Lanting is a woman, then her husband is most likely interested in men. Fangji also said, not necessarily. Maybe she's a woman who likes to polish her mirror. Jiang Pingji laughed coldly. Chapter 16:16. Jiang Pingji was prepared to attack Nanxing, and the first to bear the brunt was Yang Tao's former territory. The ones who were most worried weren't In Chui and the others, but the aristocrats who had betrayed Yang Tao. They were burning with anxiety. How could they not be anxious? The group of aristocrats had been bewitched and recruited by In Chui. To be precise, they had been attracted by the pie that Lu Zheng had drawn. They were blinded by greed and dizziness. They gritted their teeth and abandoned Yang Tao, who had lost his power. Not only had they led their troops to rebel against Yang Tao, but they had also forced Yang Tao to the brink of death several times. They had been so resolute not only to eliminate Yang Tao, but also to show their loyalty to the new master by stepping on their old master. They had thought that In Chui would fulfill his promise after doing so well. They hadn't expected him to burn the bridge after crossing it. Only 10 to 20% of the benefits that had been agreed upon had been fulfilled. The rest had been delayed until there was no sign of them. No one dared to urge them. In Chui even pretended to be deaf and dumb. It was obvious that he was going to renege on his debt. To put it bluntly, this kind of unspoken behavior was akin to ignoring others. He wasn't willing to cut his own flesh, but he ran faster than anyone else when asked to reap the benefits. They had just gotten rid of Yang Tao, and Chui had sent people to take over the benefits and take over Yang Tao's territory. After taking control of the territory, Chui didn't send people to govern or pacify the people. He didn't open the granaries to release grain or anything like that. Instead, he gathered troops, recruited the young, and lobbied the wealthy. It was understandable if the former two were fighting to the death with Jiang Pingji to increase their own strength, but the latter's actions were thought-provoking. The astute aristocrats could see through it at a glance. Wasn't this taking advantage of the situation? Chui had sent people to lobby for them. He'd painted a nice and fragrant cake. The wealthy would provide money and grain to help him get listed. Would they buy it or not? If they bought it, they didn't know when they could recoup their losses. Chui only needed to move his lips, but they would have to pay with real money and grain. What if Chui reneged on his debt? If they didn't buy it, the owner of the land under their feet would change from Yang Tao to Chui. Did they have the right to say no? Even though the aristocrats had connections and status, the private troops they raised couldn't compare to those of the feudal lords. Chui wanted to act like a hoodlum, using all sorts of ways to exploit and squeeze out their family assets and private stashes. They were forced into a passive position. Seeing through Anne's tricks, the group of hot-headed speculators finally calmed down. Duxi's words may sound nice, but in reality he doesn't do what he says. Yang Jingzi, on the other hand, Chui was in a crisis of trust, and the empty promises he had promised were unable to attract large amounts of investment for him. The rich families that had been fooled had also learned their lesson. At this moment, Chui revealed his true colors as well. He switched from negotiating to using both the carrot and the stick to threaten them, causing them to suffer in silence. Every time this happened, they would remember how good Yang Tao was. Even though Yang Tao was from Dongqing and relied more on the team he brought out from Dongqing, Yang Jingzi was also a man of steel. He was a man of his word, and there was nothing wrong with that. The Nanqing aristocrats who had supported Yang Tao in the beginning had also earned quite a bit of dividends. Even though Yang Tao had lost to Jiang Pingji in the end, it was still better than Chui squeezing them dry right from the start. How regretful. The leaders of a few aristocratic families gathered together for a discussion. Their words were extremely dissatisfied with Chui. In contrast to Chui, the former Lord Yang Tao had become a cinnabar mole in the white moonlight. I originally thought that Chui's power was strong and that he had unified more than half of Nanxing. He should be able to fight Lu Shi. Now it seems that he's only strong on the outside but weak on the inside. A clan leader dressed in an indigo Confucian robe said in a low voice. Lu Shi led his troops south and acted as if he was invading Nanxing's land. We sent 12 urgent letters to Chui asking for help, but he was indifferent. We really misjudged him. Fighting a war was an activity that burned money and manpower. In the past 2 months, Chui had vigorously recruited troops and horses, almost pulling away all the young and strong men in the vicinity. Now there were only old, weak and disabled soldiers left in the city. Every family could gather more than 10,000 elites, but it was not a long-term solution. Jiang Pingji was a vassal who had unified Dongqing. The 10,000 elites were not even enough to fill the gaps between her teeth. It was too late to spend money to recruit troops and horses to defend the city. The young and strong men in the vicinity were like chives. They had long been harvested by that greedy fellow Chui over and over again. They were all bald. Without the young and strong men as the main force, how could they defend against Jiang Pingji's wolf-like army? It would be fine if it was just Jiang Pingji, but Jiang Pingji did not hold grudges against Yang Tao and allowed him to assist in training the troops. With Yan Lin's assistance, the two of them had a tacit understanding of each other. Back then they could lead thousands of people to establish a large foundation in Nanxing. Now they could lead Jiang Pingji to annex this place. Jiang Pingji was not familiar with the territory of Nanxing, but Yan Lin and his old officials were very familiar with each other. In less than 3 or 4 days the border was in a state of emergency. Jiang Pingji's navy was divided into several groups and headed south at the same time. Their momentum was unstoppable. Why are you regretting this now? We didn't gather here to reflect on Yang Tao's actions. No matter how much they regretted it, it was water that had been poured out. They should think about the current situation and how to overcome the difficulties before them. Everyone kept silent and looked at each other, staring at each other with their eyes wide open. It seemed like no one was willing to be the first to stand out. Since you all have your reservations and refuse to speak, Then I'll show my incompetence and throw a brick to attract jade. It was not a good thing for the atmosphere to be stiff, so someone could not sit still. He said, in my humble opinion, there are only 3 options before us now. Which 3? Everyone hurriedly asked. The first option is to prepare rations and gather troops to fight Lu Shi to the death. Isn't this like throwing an egg against a rock? Someone sighed gloomily. There was no difference between saying it and not saying it. The second option is to treat Chui the way we treated Yang Tao. Everyone looked at each other after hearing this. This suggestion was too rash. Jiang Pingji would not be moved if they stabbed Yang Tao first and Chui the next. If Jiang Pingji encountered a strong enemy, would they defect to their new master and stab her in the back? If they defected to Jiang Pingji, they would be lucky not to die, let alone taste the sweetness of dividends. This won't do. If we do this, how will the world view us? Forgive me for being unable to agree to such an immoral act. One by one, the other clan leaders agreed with this argument. They were the role models of the aristocratic families. How could they do evil things that were fickle for their own interests? Isn't there one more option? What's the last option? The man said, the last option. Why don't we stake it all on one throw and do our best to help Chui succeed? Everyone's faces turned green in an instant. It was as if they had swallowed several mosquitoes that had flown out of the latrine. Chui's behavior disgusted them. If they were to empty their pockets to help Chui, regardless of whether Chui won or lost, they would lose anyway. Chapter 16-17. Let's discuss. If I support Chui, I'd rather give all the grain in the granary to the refugees outside the city. At least the refugees could say a word of thanks. Even if they were fed to the beasts would know how to guard their homes. What did he get for giving him in? That Chui is a scoundrel. A scoundrel, a stubborn, crafty and evil person. From this, it could be seen that Chui had infuriated this group of people. Otherwise they would not have given him such a low evaluation. Everyone was silent, but their expressions showed that they agreed with the old chief's evaluation. Chui was truly a good-for-nothing. For the next few days, the battle situation became more and more tense, and the aura of war once again enveloped this quiet water town that was showing signs of decline. Everyone paid close attention to where Jiang Pingji's army was fighting. They heard that the other party was unstoppable and that the navy under her command had the help of Yang Tao and the others. They made full use of the terrain to appear and disappear unpredictably and advance at high speed. The few of them had mixed feelings. What was wrong with Yang Tao? Did he still defeat the vassal? Don't you have the low-key and dispirited look of a defeated vassal? Was it normal for the front lines to be so active? Jiang Pingji did not care about him. Was she not afraid that he would use his personal charm to secretly take over the military power? They realized that Yang Tao was really a magical man and Jiang Pingji was even more of a magical woman. Seeing that the two of them were working together without any ill feelings, someone said sarcastically. Tiske, Yang Jingzi wasn't forced to turn his power to Nanxing back then. He was obviously a spy sent by Lu Shi, wasn't he? They had every reason to believe that Yang Tao had come to Nanxing to scout for Jiang Pingji and act as the vanguard. Just look at how the two of them were cooperating so well. Where was the previous tit-for-tat attitude? Yang Tao and the others were familiar with the situation in Nanxing. This information was exactly what Jiang Pingji needed urgently. Just as everyone was hoping that Jiang Pingji's troops and horses would not be able to adapt to the difference in the weather between the north and the south, and that an epidemic would happen, they realized expressionlessly that the enemy was almost at their doorstep. This group of people felt deeply aggrieved. Most of the soldiers under Jiang Pingji's command were northerners. Even if they were trained, their swimming skills could not be compared to the soldiers of Nanxing. Dongqing's climate was dry, while Nanxing's was hot and humid with lots of rain. With such a huge difference in climate, they should not have been acclimatized. In the end, it was another slap in the face. Jiang Pingji's smooth sailing made them doubt the accuracy of the history books. The talk about acclimatization and the frequent outbreaks of diseases were all fake. Little did they know that the so-called acclimatization and diseases, other than physical differences, were more related to poor military hygiene and inadequate medical standards. As a general in the interstellar era, how could Jiang Pingji not know this? She had been in the army for so many years, and no matter how many soldiers she had never slacked on the discipline and hygiene of the barracks. Strict adherence to military discipline was the most important quality of elites, And camp hygiene was the foundation of the logistics of the three armies. After nearly 10 years of strict discipline, the soldiers in the tent had gotten used to it. As long as the conditions allowed, they would pay attention. If the conditions of war weren't good and they couldn't even care about their lives, no one would be so picky about hygiene. No matter how they complained, it was an indisputable fact that the enemy was about to arrive. Similarly, there wasn't much time left for them to hesitate. Initially, there were a few people who wanted to throw away their pride and extend an olive branch to Jiang Pingji. Once they heard that the vanguard was Yang Tao, they immediately retreated. If they really surrendered, they would probably be killed by Yang Tao before they could even see the person in question. After the deed was done, Yang Tao would frame them, tarnish their reputation and give all their family assets to Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji would turn a blind eye to Yang Tao's actions. If they died, they would have died in vain. It was quite sad to think about it this way. They couldn't surrender. That would be courting death. They also couldn't bet on Enshui. That would be like throwing a meat bun at a dog. There was no return. After thinking about it, it was better for them to move away with their families. They couldn't afford to offend them, but they could hide from them. The world was so big. They didn't believe that Jiang Pingji could lead Yang Tao to conquer every inch of land. Dreams were plentiful, but reality was harsh. When they dragged their families to pack up their belongings and secretly moved, they were intercepted by unfamiliar troops. The head of the family looked at Qian Su, who was leading them, with a pale face. It was as if his face had been painted white. Qian Su smiled and cupped his hands. He greeted them in a graceful manner. "We haven't seen each other for a few months. How have you been?" Qian Su brought more than 1,000 troops to intercept them. Most of them were cavalrymen. On the other hand, the moving troops had many carriages and horses, but most of them were old, weak women and children. There were only 500 guards. It was obviously unrealistic to protect the old, weak women and children while fending off the enemy's weapons. How have you been?" Qian Su pulled the reins. The 1,000 troops he brought surrounded the other party. He trembled. He finally vented his anger from being tricked. Even though he relied on Jiang Pingji's power to vent his anger, it wasn't important. His old master Yang Tao didn't mind. He forgot himself on the battlefield and charged straight into the territory he used to govern. Qian Su didn't mind at all. "Where are you going?" Qian Su asked in a gentle voice. The head of the family watched as the guards around him were taken down before they could even fight for a few rounds. His face suddenly turned ashen. He squeezed out 2 words from the root of his teeth. "Scout. Kiss." Qian Su smiled. "It's a chaotic time. It's a long journey to visit your family. You've brought along your family and so much property. What will you do if you encounter bandits? If it's light, you'll lose money. If it's heavy, you'll lose both your family and your property. Considering our old friendship, why don't you let us escort you?" The head of the family was so angry that he almost fell to the ground. "Bandits? Isn't Qian Su in front of me a standard bandit? How dare he call a thief to stop a thief?" Qian Su suddenly stopped smiling. He raised his hand and waved his sleeves. He said coldly, "What are you all standing there for?" As soon as he finished speaking, the soldiers raised their swords. Screams and screams were heard one after another. All the guards were executed. The head of the family looked at the guards and servants in his residence being killed with a pale face. A chill ran from his back to the back of his head. "What do you want to do?" Qian Su said, "Naturally, I want to send you back to your residences. Most of the people in the wilderness are women and children. It's too dangerous without guards." "You're going too far. People without guards? Weren't they all killed by Qian Su's order?" He was held down by 2 soldiers by the shoulders like a prisoner, which made him feel ashamed and humiliated. The sword at Qian Su's waist was pressed against his neck. With just a little more force, his head would fall to the ground. He didn't dare to move. "Going too far?" Qian Su's thin lips curled into a cold smile. He said mockingly, "The winner is king and the loser is the bandit. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose. Whatever you did back then, I'll pay you back. You relied on Enshui's power. Why can't I rely on Lu Shi's power? A loss is a loss. Don't say such pompous words. If you have the energy to bark like a dog, why don't you think about how to deal with the aftermath of your family?" "You dare?" Qian Su laughed coldly in his ear. "Why not?" Chapter 16-18. No one expected Yang Tao to come so fast. No one had time to react. A few of them had already packed their belongings and ran out of the city with their families. Unfortunately, they were intercepted by Qianxia and the others. The remaining few families moved slower. When hundreds of soldiers barged into their houses, their mansions were still in a mess. Some had already packed up while others were still piled up. The servants were busy, and the women in the backyard were unaffected by the outside world. They were as stable as Mount Tai. According to Yanlin's order, if anyone dared to resist, they would be killed regardless of their gender. At first, some of the servants pulled out their swords, but after a few of them fell, the rest didn't dare to make a move. The master of the house stood in the hall with a pale face. A few important women were also trapped there. The soldiers didn't touch anyone. Occasionally, some of them would sneak something into their sleeves or arms. Jiang Pingji had always been strict with her soldiers. She didn't encourage such behavior, but she didn't forbid it either. The soldiers were too uneducated. She could only ask them not to make mistakes of principle, disturb the people, and be lenient in other aspects. When Yang Tao barged into the manor while wearing a suit of armor, the face of the landowning household leader darkened. His beard trembled so hard that it looked like it was electrifying. "How dare you?" The leader of the Shi family was over 50 years old. He had many children and grandchildren. There were 25 guards in the hall. The older ones, such as the leader of the Shi family, were in their 40s. The youngest one was only 3 months old. He was still crying in his mother's arms. Children's cries were the most heart-wrenching but also the most annoying. At that moment, the leader of the Shi family was no longer in the mood to play with his grandson. He didn't like his grandson because he looked like himself. Instead, he felt annoyed and disgusted. His grandson's biological mother, his daughter-in-law, saw the fierce and impatient look in her father-in-law's eyes. She was so scared that she lowered her head. She secretly sobbed while gently coaxing her little son, who couldn't stop crying. The hall was even more chaotic. "Everyone's here." Yang Tao put his hand on the weapon at his waist and smiled at the leader of the Shi family. "Who gave you permission to break into their house?" The old chief's gray beard trembled slightly as he scolded. Yang Tao didn't answer. Instead, Yanlin, who was behind him, sneered. "Of course, it's allowed by strength in numbers." The old patriarch was infuriated, and his wife hurriedly supported him to steady him. "How arrogant!" Yanlin said. "Every dog has its day. Back then you were heartless and betrayed us. Why didn't you foresee what would happen today? Don't think that the entire world is on your side just because you have a few words to say. Old man, you reap what you sow." How could Chui convince these people to give up on Yang Tao? Apart from Lu Zhang's eloquence and ability to pinpoint their weaknesses and worries, their greed and hypocrisy were also a major reason. Investment is risky, so one must be cautious when entering the industry. There was no such thing as a sure-win investment in this world. These landowning households planned to stand firm in this chaotic world and even take advantage of this chaotic world to advance further. Naturally, they had to bear the corresponding risks. Yanlin didn't blame them for withdrawing their investment when things went south. But it was too much to turn around and step on them. The cause sown that day will bear fruit today. You call others arrogant, but why don't you look at yourself in the mirror? Even though Yang Tao didn't take it to heart, Yanlin couldn't let it go. These people held Zhou Xian Yang Wuxia, and the 2 children hostage to threaten Yang Tao. They almost killed Yang Tao. He couldn't forget it even if he wanted to. Even the others could tell that Yanlin didn't come with good intentions, let alone the old patriarch who was used to deceiving others. He was panting with rage and his wrinkled cheeks were turning purple. "You're just a bunch of dogs who rely on their master's power. So what if you kill us today? At the end of the day, you're still Lu Shi's lackeys. You're just stray dogs." The old patriarch knew very well that Yanlin wouldn't kill them, but he wouldn't let them go easily either. If he robbed them of their wealth and blamed the refugees and bandits for it, they wouldn't be able to avenge themselves. Without the wealth they had accumulated over the years, how could they make a comeback in the future? There were so many main and side branches that they had become a burden. If they were robbed of all their wealth, they would only be left with a bunch of people waiting to be eaten. They wouldn't even need the outside world to kick them when they were down. Yanlin sneered. Yang Tao said seriously, "Xiaoyang, why are you wasting so much time talking to them?" Yanlin calmed down and asked, "In Jing's opinion, how should we deal with these people?" Yang Tao asked casually, "They're just a bunch of prisoners. If we don't arrest them, are we supposed to worship them like Buddha?" The old patriarch and the others were livid. Blue veins popped on their foreheads. Only Yanlin was smiling. Jingzi is right. There's no need to waste our time talking to these people. Just arrest them. After saying that, the old patriarch saw pairs of soldiers working together to carry boxes after boxes of items out. The old patriarch's eyes were about to pop out of his head. These boxes were gold and silver financial records, account books, land deeds, and incomplete books. There were at least 200 boxes in total. Bandits. Shameless. Don't go too far. The old patriarch's eyes rolled back and he fainted. His children and daughters-in-law were so frightened that they surrounded him. Yang Tao snorted and waved his hand. Keep an eye on these people lest they collude with the enemy. Let's go to the next house. Jiang Pingji wanted to rob the rich, but she couldn't just do it by force. He had to find a reason. Yang Tao asked Yanlin worriedly as he was leaving. Lu Lanting is really doing this. Is she planning to rob along the way? Yang Tao thought that Jiang Pingji was too bold. She had offended the entire Nanxing aristocratic circle. Yanlin's eyes were emotionless. He said coldly, so what? Lu Shi was born in Dongqing, not Nanxing. Most of the aristocratic families in Nanxing were under Enchui's protection. They didn't have any good intentions towards her. If Lu Shi didn't treat them as enemies, was she going to worship them as her ancestors? The winner takes all. She didn't kill them all and only took some of their belongings. Wasn't that merciful? Besides, she has been fighting for 2 years. She has enough soldiers, but she is running low on food. If she doesn't find a way to replenish her food, what will she do when she runs out of food? Turn corpses into human meat to satisfy her hunger? He has no choice. Yang Tao was shocked. Lack of food. Yanlin said, I heard that after Lu Shi started his rebellion he has been plowing the fields year after year. The fertility of the fields is getting worse and worse. Now he is at the end of his rope. She's been fighting for another 2 years and that's enough food for 400,000 soldiers. That's not a small sum.